Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Aishi Sharma, and it is an absolute pleasure to welcome you all to MitKat's third event of the year, MitKat EMEA Risk Symposium. Today, we have an exceptional lineup of speakers and panelists who will share their expertise on global risk, emerging opportunities, and security trends shaping the future. Thank you, all of you, for your time and enthusiasm for joining us today. It is truly wonderful to have you with us. Before we get started, I just have few housekeeping announcements. For those who are interested or for those who cannot be with us till the end of today's session, the clippings of today's event will be uploaded on our YouTube channel, so you may view the event again. And secondly, if you have any questions for the panelists, please put them on the Q&A box, which is separate from the chat box below. Now, our agenda for the day are as follows. We will start with the opening keynote address by Professor Martin Gill. Then we will start with the first panel discussion on global risk outlook, which will be moderated by Sushil Pradhan, Executive Director and Chief Operating Officer, MidCat Advisory. Thereafter, Anushka Mohanto, Team Lead of Americas and EMEA Risk Intelligence Team, will unveil the EMEA Risk Outlook 2025, and our product manager, Abhijit Korde, will give us a small demo on our open risk intelligence platform, Data Surfer. Then we will head on to the second panel discussion, which will be on EMEA Risk and Opportunities Outlook 2025, which will be moderated by Farah London, Regional Head, MidCat Advisory. And finally, for the last panel discussion of the day, we will dwell on the intersection of technology, travel security, executive protection, resilience, and duty of care. And this will be moderated by Ranjit Sinha, our Director of Strategic Initiatives. Finally, we will end the event with the closing remarks, which is to be delivered by Manoj Singh, Associate Director at MidCat Advisory. Without further ado, let's get started. To begin the proceedings, we are honored to have with us a distinguished expert in security, Professor Martin Gill. Professor Gill is the Director of Outstanding Security Performance Awards, OSPA, and has dedicated his career to understanding and improving security practices worldwide. He's also a professor of criminology and a widely published author, having produced 14 books and over 100 articles. Today, he will share insights on what makes security good. So please join me in welcoming Professor Martin Gill. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much indeed. And I am very conscious that I've got a very little bit of time. So I wonder whether I could just put some thoughts to you from information I draw from three worlds. The first one is, of course, the OSPAs. And thank you, Ayusha, for mentioning those. These are a global worldwide award scheme in 48 countries and growing. So if it's not in your country, speak to me. Where we try to recognize those who are truly outstanding at what they do, because there's a big difference between being outstanding and merely good. The second area where I'm drawing information from is we do thought leadership podcasts where we interview experts and have webinars on people around the world, 200 so far. The latest one being Powen from MitKat, a very engaging conversation. And the third world is from the world of research. I'm a criminologist, I'm a researcher. And when they first asked me, when MitKat first asked me to do this talk, I said, I can't, because I'm out in the field and I'm really busy. And being MitKat, rather than just saying, okay, they said, who cares? I said, but I've got a problem. And this is what I'm doing. And I'm going to tell you something now. And I want you to just bear with me while I finish the sentence. This morning and yesterday, I've been out stealing from shops. And what I do is, as a criminologist, I've studied offenders. And some of the big retailers and others in the United Kingdom pay me to take my 3 prolific ex-offenders shoplifting. And what we do is we go into shops, assess the risks, they steal all the goods they can, and then we give them all back and explain the strengths and weaknesses of security. I have to say to you, of all the things I do as a criminologist, there is perhaps nothing more insightful than offenders giving immediate feedback in situation about security. And I have to say, it is one of the big lessons about what works and what doesn't work. This very morning, it's now 6 minutes past 9. We started at 7 a.m. And we went to a retailer, three of them and me. I tell you something interesting. They live chaotic lives, those three. They're ex-offenders. They've been in trouble since they were 13 and 14 years old. One of them once shared a cell in prison with his father and his grandfather. Gives you an idea of the sort of careers they've had. All three of them, though, have been prolific since teenagers. And I met them this morning, and all of them turn up early. They're used to being in prison, so they're good at getting up early. They're always on time. And they went stealing this morning, and they come out with all their goods and they explained to me how they did it. And you know, one of the interesting things about security from their point of view, whether there is security there or not is largely irrelevant. One of the fascinating things is that to them, when they go stealing, there's obviously security there. The question is it going to impact on them? And this very morning, they walked into a store and there was a security guard there. Now, that is typically a dangerous thing from their point of view. But the security guard wasn't speaking to them, he was busy. And so having a security guard there is next to useless if he's not busy. Now, last night we went into a store, a different store, and the security guard, as we walked in, immediately said, "Good morning." Sorry, good evening. Just what you don't want when you're an offender. What an offender wants is to be left alone to steal and get out with the goods. And the least you can do for an offender, the best you can do for an offender, is to leave him alone or her alone. In this case, it's three men. Leave them alone. And what you begin to learn is that with every measure, the judgment from them is not whether it exists or not. The question, does it make a difference? So the guard this morning really didn't make any difference. There was a tag on the item, but it was loose, so they took it off. There was a members of staff about, but they didn't say good morning to them or good evening to them. And so all of these in different contexts would have been impediments to committing theft. But since they weren't activated, since they weren't operational, they didn't make any difference. And it's a real lesson here that we have to remember that having measures is neither here nor there. The question is, are they effective in the context in which they work? Now, some people say, some criminologists say for this reason, that's the trouble. No measures work. And I would say, from my experience, completely the opposite point of view. The truth of the matter is, all the measures we come up against and the boys talk about are potentially effective, providing they are specified correctly, they are fit for purpose, they are of a good quality, people or technology, that they are operated effectively, and that they combine together to have an impact in situ. Now, therein comes the trick of good security, because I happen to believe that the skill in doing that well is a very, very valuable skill to have. There's nothing axiomatic, nothing obvious about the ability to say we've got security measures that leads to that job being done well. To me, increasingly, the more I'm confronted with the reality of security over my lifetime, the more I've become to understand that the trouble with security is it looks and sounds easy. All you need is CCTV. All you need is a guard. All you need is the latest technology. When in fact, none of those are any good at all, unless they work in context. And what makes things work in context is where the skill comes in. And it takes a lot of skill and a lot of initiative and a lot of ability to make these things work. Because often the case in security is to get others to do the work for you. Today, this very morning, there were staff about, but none of them acknowledged them. None of them. Now, when we went into a store yesterday, the minute we walked in, one of the first of all, the guard, then a member of staff said, "Good evening." Very bad news. Very bad news. As it happens, would you believe it? Would you believe this? One of them found a blind spot, concealed a bottle of alcohol. This is the second time he went in. And the minute he did that, there was a sound in the retail store which says, "This is Scottish security. We're just letting you know that you're being observed. We're just letting you know that you're being observed." Well, goodness, he said. Yeah, I didn't like that. And then immediately, a guard and a member of staff came up to him with a camera, with body worn cameras. And he's saying, "Good." And they said, "Are you going to cooperate, sir?" And he said, "Of course I'm going to cooperate," because he's obviously not really stealing. And he said, "Can you open your jacket?" So he opened his jacket, concealing a bottle of wine and, as it happens, a tin opener. He'd stolen both. But he didn't open it far enough. And the guard and the member of staff said, "Thank you, sir." So he closed the jacket and walked out with the stolen goods. Now, the point about this story is they nearly got everything right. But that final bit they didn't get right. They didn't carry out a sufficient enough open of the jacket, a sufficient enough identification. And so, although they spotted him stealing, although they confronted him, he still got out of the store with the goods. This is what I'm trying to make on a very simple level about what it takes to make security work well. Now, if I take the OSPAs around the world, 48 countries, and by the way, on February the 12th, so next week, we have the global Oscars, the first ever, it's the winners from every country and region for lots of different categories. If ever you wanted an example of excellence, they're the ones to look to. They've won their country and now they've qualified for the global. And if I was to very quickly pick a few things about what makes excellent security, what makes you a global winner, one of the striking things is it doesn't come down to doing anything magical. It comes down to doing these essentials excellently well. And the trouble with security, the difficulty is that doing the essentials extremely well is a very difficult thing to do. Security, unfortunately, and I hope the OSPAs go some way to overcoming this, the security world, which in my view at its best is outstanding around the world, the OSPAs has taught me that, is for a sector where the best are outstanding, I have to say it's a sector that's very shy at saying so. And one of the most damning things I can say about the security sector, and I think some people on this call are partly responsible, let me say, it's this: you don't say how good you are, and no one else knows. And I think the sector has got to start shining a light on what it means to be excellent. Because the truth of the matter is that if some of you on this call listening to me right now do not do your job properly, then assets can be lost. If some of you do not do your job properly, in worst case scenarios, an organization can go out of business. If some of you on this call now do not do your job properly, people can be injured. If some of you on this call now do not do your job properly, in worst case scenarios, people can die. This is a very serious job, and it is very, very important to do it well. And all the evidence coming from me is the more excellent security is, the more input, the less injuries take place, the less thefts that take place, the less damage that gets caused. And this world of security is truly outstanding around the world at its very best. And my point is, we need to start telling the world just how good it is, because it's not a trivial matter. The work done is fundamental. It's highly skilled. It just looks easy. And unless we begin to communicate what excellent security means and the difference it makes, the difference I'm talking here is not about the difference between being excellent and being merely poor. I'm talking there's a big difference between being excellent and average, excellent and good. Those differences have major, major impacts on society, on communities, on people, and on organizations. And therefore, we need to shine a light on the world of security, on how excellent it is, because it's very, very, very important we do so. Not least because around the world, and my final point is there is growing recognition and awareness that security, which has traditionally around the world been seen as the exclusive or majority responsibility of law enforcement, we are now coming to increasingly realize that it is the corporate and private sectors that play a fundamental part in protecting our workspaces, our leisure places, our national infrastructure. And we need to recognize that as not a trivial matter, highly skilled, highly important, makes a difference, very good. Let's say so, and let's shine a light and begin to take this profession of security to the next stage of development. Ayesha, it looks like you've come on to say, don't go over, it's 16 minutes past and you're supposed to finish at 15 minutes
No,
past. So
no,
a busy
no,
agenda.
not
So
at all.
I'll stop there. I
Not at
just want
all,
to
sir.
hopefully make a few points rather than anything else.
Okay,
That's
sir.
it. Thank you.
Uh, Thank you so much, Professor Gill, for sharing your expertise. It is truly always, a pleasure to have you and learn from you. And also, thank you for setting the tone for what to expect in today's discussions ahead. Now, we would like to start with the first panel discussion, which will focus on Global Risk Outlook 2025. Uh, the world today, the world today is witnessing unprecedented changes in the risk landscape, and our esteemed panelists will provide key insights in what lies ahead. This session will be moderated by our very own Sushil Pradhan, Executive Director and Chief Operating Officer of MitKat Advisory. A warm welcome to the panelists. Sushil sir, please take it forward.
Thank you so much, Professor Martin Gill. That was absolutely fantastic. If you're still there, and I think he's just dropped off because he had to go back to his stealing exercise. But what amazing insights! And I think this is an experience that we are fortunate to have today and hear about. So thank you again in absentia, and we shall reach out to him to thank him personally once again. But now moving on to my panel, that is the first panel that we are going to be discussing today. And obviously, we would start at the very top and drill down to the basics. We are in this webinar, which is talking about risks in the EMEA region, but we would like to start at the global level. But before we jump on to the topics, I would like to quickly do a quick round of introductions to my esteemed panelists. And I'll request all of you to turn on your cameras. So, yes, you're all there. Don, Lloyd, Kundan, uh, Pramod, thank you so much for joining us today. And we have a really stellar lineup of speakers in this panel. So Lloyd Figgins, he's the Chief Executive Officer of Travel Risk and Incident Prevention, or the TRIP Group. He was also the former Overseas Security Advisor to the British government. With over 20 years of global security experience across more than 80 countries, including high-risk environment, Lloyd brings unparalleled expertise in risk management and travel safety. And let me also say that I've had the privilege of listening to him in person many times and interacting with him very frequently. And I don't think there is anyone else that I know who knows more about travel risk management than he does. And thank you for joining us on this panel, sir. We
Pleasure.
have Hi. So we have Pramod Bhatt, who's joined us today from Paris. He's the Regional Security Director for Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Russia for AbbVie Biopharmaceuticals. And he oversees security strategy, risk management, and crisis response across multiple regions. He's got over 2 decades of experience, including in his time in the Indian Army. He's held key roles at Sanofi, Deutsche Bank, and Hill and Associates, managing asset protection, anti-counterfeiting, and executive security. He's been a recognized speaker again at very many global security conferences, and he's contributed to industry discussions at the ASIS, OSAC, and TAPA events across the world. Thank you for joining us, Pramod. We have Don Randall, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Don Randall Associates. He's served with the City of London Police for many years, with specific emphasis on fraud and counterterrorism. After that, 13 years at JP Morgan Chase as managing director, he joined the Bank of England in 2008 and was appointed the bank's first CISO in 2013. He is the chairman of sister banks, the City of London Crime Prevention Association, Project Griffin, member of City of London Crime Disorder Reduction Panel, and many other security forums. As Martin Gill rightly said, if you don't have him, then you don't have anyone of repute. And in 2007, he was also awarded the Member of the British Empire for services to law enforcement for the harmonization of public and private sectors. And he's won multiple other awards, which if I start listing out, we'll spend a lot of time on, but do look at his profile. Currently, he's a senior security advisor to several major firms engaged in cybersecurity, legal and regulatory risk, physical security, etc. So thank you, Don, for joining us again this morning or this afternoon.
It's my pleasure.
We have Kundan Singh Shekhawat, who's the founder and CEO of Ascent Business Technology, which is a fintech company specializing in enterprise reconciliation and business continuity management. With his prior leadership roles at Liquid Hub, which was subsequently acquired by Capgemini, Microsoft, and Fidelity National Information Services, he brings extensive experience in business strategy, B2B enterprise solutions, and emerging market expansion. He's currently based out of Greater Toronto area, Canada. But as we speak, he's currently in India. And thanks, Kundan, for being here with us before you rush to the airport to catch your flight to Canada. So without any further delay, I'm going to set the tone for the discussion and then go round robin to the various panelists for their comments. So as we are aware, with the change in the leadership level at the world's greatest superpower today, we have huge geopolitical and geoeconomic shifts. There are technology conflicts and resource wars which are shaping the new world order. And we have greater instability, greater unpredictability, polarization of narratives. There's a trust deficit, and we have insecurity, whether of the strategic kind or the economic kind or the demographic kind. Climate change also looms large on us, and it's changing weather pattern that are causing extreme weather phenomena across the globe. So today we deal as risk managers and security leaders and security advisors. We all deal with multiple kinds of risks and huge degree of unpredictability. So to start the discussion, I'll request all the panelists in turn to talk about what are their top global risk priorities for 2025, and how do you think they differ from the previous years? So I'll throw this question to all of them, but going in sequence. Pramod, if we could have your views first. Pramod, you're on mute. If you're speaking, we can't hear you. No, Pramod, I think we are still missing your audio. So maybe, Pramod, you could try logging in and logging out again. In the meantime, I'll shift the focus and ask Don to give his comments while Pramod gets back to us. Don, all yours.
No, that's fine. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So I think I'd like to do it two ways, because I don't think things change. I think the dynamics and the intensity of things change. So what I'd like to talk about at some point is just how we deal with this as single entities. But cyber is clearly at the top of the house, because it actually overrides all the other acts of criminality. From Martin's theft, when he mentioned technology, all the way through to terrorism. So in my mind, we have cyber terrorism, extremism, and terrorism are overlapping these days, and we've seen that in the United Kingdom, with particularly the issues with the marches in London as a consequence of the conflicts in Gaza, where traditional demonstrations have moved to terrorist type activity. The civil unrest is extreme, and we see that it can be sparked by the most simple of things anywhere in the world. You go back and even misreporting by journalists caused a petrol famine in this country, which took about 3 months to recover from, just because a journalist made an inappropriate comment. And I think the other one that is often forgotten is the insider threat. And I'm sure Lloyd will talk about that from his government days. Insider threat is not always obvious. It's there, and we know that sleepers go into organizations and institutions at state and local level and are prepared to sleep there for 20 years before they activate their actual criminal intent. So that's the collective. And at some point later on, Sushil, I'll talk about how I think we can deal with those things. So basically, I don't think much changes. It's just the suit that changes. The methodology. If we look at the terrorist activity, the lone person now is the way they do it. So the organization of terrorist activity is more difficult to identify, define, and respond to, because people act alone once they've been radicalized and changed. And the world conflict gives good reason for people to change as well. So I think they're my top priorities, which if you go back, Cecile, 5 years, they're no different to what I would say 5 years ago. Just the intensity, the methodology, and the application change.
Okay, that's a very good perspective where you say that as per you, the risks or their dynamics haven't changed. It's just how they've intensified, how they've shifted, and how they are applied to the current scenario. Thanks, Don, and we'll wait for you for the next round. In Pramod, are you back? And can we?
Yeah, I think I'm audible now, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. So thank you very much, Cecile. I think we all know it's a globally interconnected world, and there are multiple variety of risks which have been discussed. But we have to look at holistically because they are interconnected. One risk connects to another one. There's a fallout of another risk. I know probably I'll also request you, I created a small slide for people to understand comprehensively. And then, I can describe one by one in 2 minutes time.
Yeah, so we've given you the rights to share that slide. You can share your screen.
Okay, let me share my screen. Is it visible?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay, so primarily what we are trying to say here is that we can group these all risks globally in 2 buckets. One are more geopolitical, as you see on the left side, talking about there's a global divide coming, increasing polarization at global level, whether you talk about, it's US versus China, or you talk about NATO versus Russia, or G7 versus BRICS, which is going to be another issue which is going on. What it leads to, there have been several consequences of this global polarization. For example, direct conflict. We have seen example, Ukraine-Russia war is a kind of direct confrontation. There have been several indirect confrontation as well elsewhere, trade sanctions, and multiple variety of fallout from this equation. And obviously, it rolls down to at micro level when fallout of all these conflicts leads to things like food grain crisis, all sort of crisis there. But the second side, you have the other blocks, which is your regional divide. And I say why regional divide? Because there are places, for example, Middle East, you have regional divide in the way that it's Iran and its proxies versus Saudi Arabia. Iran, its proxies versus Israel. And then similarly, on the eastern side, you have China versus Taiwan, China versus Philippines, China versus India, and so and so. So everybody wants to dominate in their respective region as well. They're not global impact, but regionally it is also creating impact. And several fallouts. We have seen fallouts in the Middle East part, all of you are aware about. Don spoke about the Israel-Hamas war and its repercussion for whole of Middle East. Similarly, out of these 2 equations, which is global divide and regional divide, One of the fallout, which is a significant one, probably creating a lot of impact on Europe, is failing and fragile state. When you look from probably Pakistan to West Africa, this whole belt is kind of, I would say, belt of insecurity. A lot of failed states, no governance. People are been moving here and there, and you can just hire them as a mercenary as well. Europe is facing already this issue where you have sometimes illegal migrant which are difficult to integrate in the society, and we see increasing incident of stabbing, a lot of other issue popping up because of that part. So this is more from the geographical perspective, but you look on the right side, which is becoming more and more serious because they also connect to the equation which on the left side. First thing is the societal divide, not only at a global level, but I think every country is getting stressed into left and right, extreme left and extreme right. There used to be days when it used to be, centrist government in Europe in many places, but now it's stretching apart. We see more countries moving on the far right. So I think that's a situation where we see a lot of protest happening. It's already happening. And we see more and more consequences of the societal divide as well. Then the other thing is about cyber and AI. I put them together, even though they doesn't relate much, a little bit overlap within them. Cyber, statistics, health,
Pramod, I think breaking up, your audio is breaking up.
We don't clearly
Pramod, I think your audio is breaking up. So probably if you could stop the screen sharing and connect bandwidth. I think he's dropped off. Anyway, we have other speakers and we'll catch up with Pramod subsequently. So Lloyd, over to you. Your perception of global risks. How do you anticipate what's going to happen in this year, and how does it square off against what we've seen in the past?
Well, I think the past is a very good place to start, Sushil, and thank you and MitKat for inviting me. There's some of us who are on this symposium who are old enough to remember the Cold War, and so we have actually been in this or a similar place before. Don's point about the overarching side being cyber and digital is absolutely correct, because that is the game changer. That is what has changed since the Cold War. But throughout the history since the Cold War, we've seen conflict, we've seen regime change, we've seen all of the things that we're dealing with at the moment. And the past is the way to show us the future. I think that one of the important facts that we've really got to look at here is that we have to deal in fact and not in opinion. So again, Don's point about fuel shortages in the UK due to irresponsible journalism is a very, very important point, because we're living in a time where it's not just journalists who are journalists. Everybody is a journalist. So the rise of social media, the rise of influencers, the rise of people who have an ulterior agenda is actually, for the security industry as a whole, is actually a very, very dangerous point to be in. So yes, we've got to look to the future, but let's look at the past first, because nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody can actually tell us what's going to happen in the future, but we can learn from the past and then make the necessary adjustments in order that we can apply those to the current threats. As far as what those threats are, I think that, using my experience working with organizations, not just in government, but, organizations such as NATO and so on, there's an acronym which we use quite regularly, which is called TESOC. And TESOC stands for terrorism, espionage, sabotage, subversion, and organized crime. Now, all of those elements we are seeing in increasing numbers as we go around the world. And as you alluded to in your introduction, Sushil, my background is very much in travel risk management and risks overseas. But more and more, we are seeing domestic issues becoming part of the travel risk management process, and making sure that we are also looking at threats in transport hubs domestically as well as overseas, because we know that that's where terrorists are likely to target. But we do have this problem again, as Don alluded to, of these lone actors, where there isn't too much of a footprint. We've certainly had some very high profile cases in the UK where these largely went undetected. And going back to Professor Martin Gill's points earlier on, regarding security and how we are as an industry, and perhaps we don't verbalize enough our successes. I think the very nature of the security industry is that we don't do that. And there's often very, very good reasons that we don't do that. And a lot of those reasons are security based. But we're also very quick to be criticized when we get it wrong. And I mean that on, from the very, very highest level. And I think it just goes back to that adage when we talk about terrorism, that the terrorists only have to get lucky once. We've got to be lucky all the time. And I don't think that now applies just to government. I think that applies to manned security. It provides. It applies to protection services. It applies to all levels of security. And if we are going to be good at this, and we are going to continue to have successes, we need to go back to the things that made us successful in the first place, which Martin alluded to, is this layered approach to security. There's no point having one really good thing and then everything else is not up to, is not going to pass muster. We've got to have things working in unison across the whole spectrum of security. And without that, we're gonna struggle as an industry, and we are going to find that when we are caught out, that the reporting on that is going to be a lot more harsh. It's going to be a lot more critical. So I think that one of the issues that we also have within the industry is, you've got a very esteemed panel here. I know you've got another esteemed panel afterwards. But we also see within the industry people kind of jumping on the bandwagon who are claiming that they have experience or knowledge in particular areas. And that, when it gets found out that they don't, is exceptionally damaging to the whole industry.
That's really hard hitting, and I think something that everyone in the audience should take away. I think what you mentioned about security only being as good as its weakest link is going to affect us going forward. But we'll come back to you for more inputs about some other aspects of risk. But Kundan, your view on the global risk scenario for 2025.
Morning, everyone, and thank you, Sushil. I think I'm going to start from where Pramod left with the presentation on cyber and AI. If you look at the global risk outlook, I think EMEA is no different from a perspective of cyber and AI. These, over the years, if we look at where we finished 2024 and what we see as a changing everyday dynamics and the world changing with the AI and the cyber in 2025 and onwards, I think these two will come up and emerge as the biggest risk going forward for all of us, rest of the world. Going into particularly the EMEA regions per se, I think EU is the first one to stir up a EU Act, the AI Act, and of course the GDPR, the DORA, all these other regulations puts up a dual challenge. One is stay ahead of the threats, at the same time stay in compliance. So, it is a double whammy for the security professionals and the compliance leaders to be in that space. Within cyber, I think cyber has been there as a risk. AI, quadruples it, or, puts a 10x more on the cyber way, because it's an autonomous agentic AI powered attacks now, where you don't need a human, you don't need people to think. It's AI which is thinking against you. So however AI can be leveraged, there's equally damaging, and that's where the compliances needs to stir up for different parts of the world, different regions, different industries. So that I would attribute as the biggest one. Supply chain disruption has been there, and the interconnected world that we live in with the technology landscape will make it even, bigger and more complex world. We saw all the delays and shortages in 2024. It was all about security, cyber criminals. Professor Martin talked about criminals, but then the cyber criminals are going to be increasingly targeting the suppliers and third-party vendors. So what we see now with the organizations is the TPR and the third-party risk management steadily going up and also getting added to part of the major regulation aspect, adding to the compliance element of it. Within EU, I think the corporate sustainability and the due diligence directive are all requiring businesses to have better visibility and compliance, across all the supply chain aspects of it. So again, if AI can be used in the, risk monitoring, it can be countered at some level. Climate and the environmental risk, again, it's become more stringent from regulations in the EMEA, largely at different countries around EMEA and EU, particularly around the ESG. All forms of investors and the customers are demanding, the organizations as part of the vendor management are being demanded to have better transparency, how they manage their climate risk, what are their contributions into it. So that's adding further to the regulatory requirements, but adds to the risk as well.
Thank you.
So I'll sum it up there. While geopolitical has been talked about, we all understand it.
Yeah.
Pandemic would be my fifth one, but again, we've lessons learned. We should continue to foresee there could be a potentially more, global health crisis and be ready for it. So.
Right. Thank you so much, Kundan. And really, for the EMEA region, especially climate change is something which, if you spoke to someone 2 years ago and said that there would be floods in Dubai, I think people would have laughed you off the table, and there you had them last year. So thank you so much for pointing out your perspective. Pramod, I know we missed out a little bit of the last part that you wanted to speak about, and what I'll do is I'll also give you the opportunity to from there itself take on your second question about how geopolitical shifts as the conflict in Eastern Europe, political stability in Europe, instability in Europe, which you spoke about, and the Middle East also, and the tensions in North Africa. How are they reshaping the security priorities of security leaders and risk leaders like you, who have to deal with these issues for your organizations, for your people, for your assets? How do you work out all of this? So over to you, Pramod.
Thank you, Cecile. I'm audible now this time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, perfect. So I think thanks for Kundan to take the other topics called climate. So I will not have much on it, but I will now talk about impact on EMEA, how we have been dealing in our company, and then how we've been dealing with this issue. I think one thing we talked about was the world order, which has fallout on things like instability around Europe, and we have seen Ukraine-Russia war. Now, what has happened is obviously many European countries they've increased their defense expenditure, and there's a lot of pressure more on to spend on that. We also saw, for example, countries like Poland, where individuals who were procuring more and more weapons. So far in Europe, we have very strict regulation on procuring weapons, but we probably see these weapons going here and there, and Europe facing increased incident of mass shooting. So that's a big impact for us. And we saw yesterday in Sweden, day before yesterday in Sweden, a similar impact when somebody went to the school and started shooting around. The other impact which comes, for example, from a regional divide where we see unstable Middle East and North Africa, a lot of refugees, very difficult for European countries to integrate them. We see a lot of incident of stabbing. Almost every week we see one incident of stabbing happening. So we are training our people. We used to train people globally about active shooting, but now we are training them on how you protect yourself from a stabbing incident. So that's one example. You talked about Dubai, because also part of EMEA. You talked about flooding. 3 years ago, we were training them on how to defend yourself and how to react to an incoming missile and drone. And that's a fallout from, the regional dynamics about Iran proxies versus Saudi allies. So you can imagine there's a direct fallout for the people who have offices there. I will not talk much about cyber, but Europe is going to become more and more strict on regulation because of increasing cyber concern. You can look at any survey, Alliance Risk Barometer, or any other. Cyber is number one perception or number one concern for the business leaders. Europe has rolled out NIS2 standards, which is applicable for all countries. Now there is a huge rush for all companies or all government companies, especially who are managing critical infrastructure, to comply with NIS2 standards. A lot of training on tabletop exercises on this subject, direct fallout for us. Societal divide already talked about, but what is leading to? We see increasing protests and demonstration, and I'm in Paris, so we see every week there's a protest, but we see these are protests becoming more severe. More incidents are happening here, so now we are even training people, some precautions about not getting into argument with protesters, avoid those areas. So it is creating a travel situation, a travel risk at time in those locations as well. Flooding, climate change, no doubt about it. Europe is getting directly impacted. We have seen even flooding in Greece, for example. You talked about Dubai, yes, of course. Saudi, Jeddah, and those places, we see increasing flooding, but we also see drought happening in places like Spain. Wildfire happening in Greece. 2 years ago, there was an airport which almost got engulfed in that wildfire. So we see direct impact from climate change as well. So these are some of the things which we are facing, and probably we are having a plan to train more and more.
Thank you so much, Pramod. And that was really insightful. I think with this vast region that you have to look after, I think catering for various contingencies and eventualities is really so important. Thank you for giving us all those examples. So I'll switch to Dawn again. So you did mention that the intensity of various threats and the dynamics have changed, but everyone's talking about cyber threats, state-sponsored attacks, AI-driven cybercrime. How do you think security leaders of today are going to need to prepare for handling all of these?
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity. I also think type of symposiums we aim by cross-referencing each other and go back to what my fellow speakers said, and particularly what Lloyd said. That I think that statement about you've got to be lucky all the time, you've got to be lucky once, was the early 70s by the IRA, being the first on scene at the first ever mainland bombing in England at the Tower of London. It resonates very much for me. I think what we've also got to remember when we look at history, right? Simplicity is also still a very relevant factor. You don't have to be complicated to be successful. And that's what the bad people know. And in London, literally 2 weeks ago, and Peter Lavery may talk about this later on, but we had a situation outside a very substantial organization where the extremists just came along and picked up a manhole cover and cut the wires. There's no sophistication about that. But if the security person, I'm not being critical, but had they looked at their perimeter patrols, if the CCT cameras, it doesn't take long to lift a manhole cover, but it's not just like lifting up a bit of paper, and then to then put and then actually ensure they don't blow themselves up on the wires. But literally, they put a shockwave. Not only did they disrupt London's business, but they also put a shockwave around the country about the consequence of this. And I saw something very, very similar when I first went to JP Morgan in 1996. So to that point about history and not forgetting the historic facts that are there. So what I've done for us very quickly, I produced a sort of shopping list, which I think, whether it be a person, whether it be the chief security officer, whether it be the board, whatever they need to do, to prepare for those things. So one important thing, and you can look this up at the Bank of England website. There's an initiative, there's an acronym which we created whilst I was there called CBEST. It's an acronym with no meaning, by the way, so don't ever try and find out what CBEST means, but basically it's threat-led penetration testing. And when we created the acronym, we didn't like the wording for various reasons, but we liked the acronym, so we kept the acronym. But CBEST is threat-led penetration testing. So what that actually does, it gets you to look where your principal platforms of your principal assets are. And I did a piece of work on an organization which had 250 different technology supportive systems. And I said, look, I want you to get down to your top 5. And they went, oh, we can't do that. And they gave me the top 15. Once you got the top 15, get down to the top 5. what would cause you the most harm in your organization if it was disrupted? And if you look at maybe health insurance, for example, to lose a substantial amount of money is not nice, but it's not going to break them. But to lose a substantial person's personal records would crucify their business. So identify what part of the support system is most critical to your business, and then start putting your assets and your assurance around that. That's the first thing. Second thing is, and you'll see this coming out of government soon, and I've always believed in this. I think I wrote a paper on it about 8-9 years ago, convergence. We can't work in silos within an organization. You have to be. So whether, I've always believed in the omnicompetent CSO. So the CSO has a CISO reporting to them, has a great relationship with the CIO, has a great relationship with the head of IT, has a great relationship with everything on the board in one point. Otherwise, you get diverse, and the criminals will maximize on that diversity of a lack of communication within the organization. And, we had the point in the United Kingdom where terrorism had, following 9/11, terrorism was a board item. I think you find security has slipped off the board items these days. Cyber gets attention. It should be a regular feature. I'm not saying you have to be a board member, but it should be a regular feature on the agenda of the board is security and the highlight of security. The next thing is to look at the, then the organization do this. What is your threat profile? Who is looking at you? Are they looking at you because you're in an industry that the criminals are looking at generically across the world, or are they specifically looking at you, Don Randall? And if they're looking at you, Don Randall, why are they looking at you? And we can get that. You get ahead of the game, and the legitimate organizations out there to actually discover, are you on a threat profile by virtue of your commodity or by virtue of who you are or what you are? So that's the second thing. I think we need to also, you've got to have a comms plan in place. When we get these major systemic actions, and we've seen this, the COO is not always the best person to communicate. It's not their skill set. So you've got to be prepared to have a member of your organization who can talk to the public. And then, of course, you would expect me to say this, partnership is essential. Law enforcement couldn't survive on its own. Any organization cannot survive on its own. What I'd like to think when you come out of this symposium today, people will make new friends and new colleagues and new contacts. And that's what you've got to have. Currency of connectivity, both with law enforcement and the respective agencies who can help you in a time of crisis. And more importantly, get you ahead of the game so you can make yourself more robust. So, and also at the end of the day, you've got to have a single point of contact. If organizations fall over because they make all these big claims, report this, report that, report the other, the first suspicion, and when they report it, nothing happens. And the day that happens, they'll never report it again. So you've got to have a 24-hour spot, and that's why the convergence of responsibility. So I know it's rushed, but there's a menu there of, I know you're recording it, of options. I hope that helps.
Thank you so much, Don. And I think some great tips for security practitioners and risk leaders. Now we are going to come to another critical aspect of a security leader or a risk leader's profile, that is the duty of care that is due for travel risk management. So Lloyd, after the pandemic, business travel and global operations have been moving at a very frenzied pace. And people are working remotely and on vacations, but there's a lot of travel happening. And how do you envision companies integrating their business plan with security for travelers to have a better and a more effective travel risk strategy? You're on mute, Lloyd. You need
There
to...
we go. So I would say, yes, travel has bounced back, but it took a while. So let's just remember that the pandemic hit end of 2019 all the way through 2020. And it was only really in 2024 that it kind of exceeded levels that it was at, pre-pandemic. One of the things I would say, and this has been pointed out by colleagues of mine in the actual travel industry, travel has not actually got any better as a result of the pandemic. You would have thought that the travel industry itself would have taken that time to, reignite the travel experience, but we're seeing people being shoved onto planes at rates that we've never seen before. We're seeing things like luggage. Carry-on luggage is actually a little bit of an issue for me personally. purely and simply because of the fact you've got all the elements in place. I was talking to a colleague of mine from British Airways, and they studied stress levels in travelers, and they found that the stress levels were at the highest as passengers actually step onto that aircraft door. Okay, so they step through the door and they either turn left or they turn right. Their stress levels are actually at the highest. So when we say that we see an increase in air rage incidents, part of this is down to how the airlines are actually, treating us as human beings. We're no longer customers. We're just sort of numbers, seat row numbers. So the travel experience has actually got a little bit worse. When we talk about security within that, we have to have a look at the whole journey. So yesterday, the Trip Group ran a webinar on travel risk assessments. And so the travel risk assessment has got to now be something that is really, really robust from the time someone leaves their front door to the time they actually get home. And we need to look at all the different elements that go into that risk assessment. And that includes things like journey management plans. How are they traveling? Where are they traveling? What is their route? What are their timings? What are their check-ins? And particularly if they're working in fragile or hostile areas, then all of this information becomes more important. But overridingly, it goes back to cyber. Because, as you quite rightly point out, Sushil, people are working overseas sometimes. You've got these digital nomads who are doing their things on a beach in Thailand or somewhere equally lovely. But that means that they don't necessarily have the same infrastructure in place in order to maintain that cybersecurity that is required. So yes, they can log on using a VPN. Yes, they can use a clean laptops, all those sorts of things. But when we question people about the difference between the company cybersecurity policy and the reality, overwhelmingly people say to us, yeah, we know what the policy is, but I just can't deal with that. It doesn't suit my lifestyle. I need to take my laptop to this meeting. Now, that laptop can contain huge amounts of data, and it can link to all sorts of different things. So the risks to organizations of having their people outside of the security bubble is severe. And then, VPN is something that we really need to look at, because there's a number of countries in the world now, not least of all in China and Russia and so on, where you might be doing business, but actually, VPNs are either outlawed or they're quite hard to initiate. So for the traveler or for the person who is working overseas, very, very difficult. And then it comes down to those basic security things about hostile reconnaissance. So hostile reconnaissance around a building, we might have CCTV, we might have man security who can keep an eye on that. But if you're working out of a cafe in downtown Seattle, you do not have that. You are robbed of that, essentially. So it makes hostile reconnaissance a lot easier for the perpetrators or those who might want to do harm to us or our organization, which means that people need to be trained to a higher level. So it means that we need to have people trained in travel safety and security. They need to be able to recognize signs of hostile reconnaissance. They need to be aware of their environment. Situational awareness has to be part of any travel risk management. And we need to be able to train people in what situational awareness is, what good situational awareness is, and what poor situational awareness is, and what that can potentially lead to. So the problem is with travel risk management is you've got lots of people spread over, lots of different parts of the world. One of the things that we do is we sign off high risk travel for a lot of organizations because they don't have the capability in-house to do so. And of course, that means that we have access to a lot of different systems. We can see what procedures are in place. And in the vast majority of cases, it's robust, it's good. But in a number of cases, it's not. And there is a reluctance to move security up that agenda until something goes wrong. And by the time something has gone wrong, it's too late. And we know that from even the times before digital was a particular issue. So as far as travel risk is concerned, we really need to make sure that we are doing those travel risk assessments, we're doing those journey management plans. Understanding the threat landscape for the country that we're going to is massively important. If we take looking at the EMEA region, if we take a couple of events that took place in 2023, we had South Sudan or Sudan. We had the uprising there. We had a war, and actually, not many organizations and certainly not many governments were prepared for that, and they were even less prepared for the coup that occurred in Niger in 2023, where globally governments were caught on the hop by a regime change, and so the problem, particularly with Niger, was not just that there's been a regime change, but the fact that the airspace was closed. The surrounding land borders were also largely hostile regions. So if you were to try and evacuate by road, you were probably going from the frying pan into the fire. And so therefore, you were left with a situation where you had a lot of people who were not residents of Niger under a new regime, airspace closed, land borders closed. And that makes you realize the importance of emergency response plans and evacuation plans, which need to be tried and tested before something goes wrong. So all of these things are encompassed, or should be, within your organizational travel risk management policy.
Thank you so much, Lloyd. Great examples, and we really love hearing this stuff from you because nobody else is going to tell this to us. And I really like the way where you tied up not just physical security of the travelers themselves, but also the cyber security of the assets that they are handling and the possible loss of information or data of their organizations because of cybercrime in a geography where they aren't prepared or they don't have adequate cyber security measures. In fact, I'll just take a half a minute to give you an example of a simulation exercise, crisis simulation exercise that I did for one of the organizations a couple of years back, where we created a scenario of a very senior level executive, again, on a sort of digital nomad profile and on a vacation with his laptop. And we say, and the CISO said, we are all protected because ultimately he has to log in through the company VPN, but the human being is always the weakest part of the link. And there were malicious actors or hostile elements who actually kidnapped this individual, and under duress of physical threat, they made him log into the system and reveal the passwords and give out the information that was required. So at the end of the simulation exercise, the entire board and the management of that company agreed and said, yes, this is a very plausible scenario. So we need to put in safeguards and guardrails against this kind of thing. But thank you so much for your inputs. And that takes us to the technology expert on the panel, Kundan. We've been talking AI and cybersecurity, but what do you feel in 2025 are the most pressing AI and technology risks that countries should prioritize, organizations should prioritize, and what basic strategies can be implemented to mitigate these risks while at the same time not curbing innovation?
Sure. I'll try and summarize, excuse me for my bad throat, but I'll try and keep it very brief and summarize it. I think technology's been there for a while. What changes the dynamics are the, breakneck speed on the AI. While it's changing, so are the risk. Ever since, the risk have been going up. Now, for security and risk professionals across the world, while this is changing, the regulatory affairs are catching up. And it's kind of a challenge between innovation and complying to the regulatory challenge. Take an example of the EU Act. It's setting a global benchmark. The world is following from what EU AI Act says. But compliance gaps still remains a challenge, not just for the EU, but of course, it's going to be for the rest of the world. So that's one area to watch out for in terms of a challenge. When we say AI cyber risk, now AI-powered cyber risk, I think they're very advanced in terms of the deep fakes, the autonomous malware that are reshaping. You really don't need a human being to put certain attacks in place and malware. It is so intelligent that it'll continue to learn, train itself, and get better ahead of time. How do you encounter all of this? I think the nature of the game today is become more proactive. The reactive is gone. The days are gone where we could be reactive and we will counter. And preemptiveness or being more proactive is one of the keys to stay in the game. Bias and ethical risk. I think the unchecked AI models can lead to a lot of reinforced discrimination, impacting the critical industries, bigger ones like finance and healthcare. So what data goes out, what kind of a models should be used to play is going to be one of the challenge. And so adoption within the organizations, like it's like back in the days, the chief risk officer, now you have a chief AI officer. Every organization will need one. Data privacy and sovereignty, I would still rate as high because of the tighter AI, adoption case of the personal information. AI is using your personal information all the time, and how that personal information can be played against you, whether it's a travel related, finance related, any other area, shape and form, are some of the, areas which are to watch out for. How to still mitigate all of that? I think use the data in the right way. I would say, when we look at the predictive risk modeling on AI, um, each of the organization or industries will have to create its own, as they say, large language model or small language models, and harness the power of data that's sitting within their organization and try and map it to establish some kind of predictive risk models based on the internal risk registers and external threats. What I'm talking about, something like a data surfer, plug the data in from an external source, plug the data within the organization, and come up with some kind of a fine-tuned, proactive model for organizations to adopt and follow through. So that is my take.
Thank you so much, Kundan. Great insights. And one of the things that we need to watch out against is how AI is going to take over and dominate the cyber risk scenario. And I think one of the things that can be done for all security practitioners and risk practitioners is something what Martin is doing. You have a security system in place for a store. So let somebody go and stress test it. Let somebody go and do a penetration test. And similarly, if you have a cyber defense system, keep upgrading it, but keep testing it to see, and not just sit in a bubble thinking that, oh, I'm so well protected. So we need malicious players or the black hat hackers to come and try and attack your systems. Thank you so much. I know we are running out of time for this panel, but we do have time for a quick quote from each of you, a quick takeaway on the global risk scenario for 2025 as you see it. We'll go round robin, starting with you, Pramod. Just a 30-second soundbite, please.
I think these questions have been asked, what comes next, what comes next. So we have to look at historically, I think, and then why it happens. There are two reasons I always say. One is my way is the only way. My ideology, my way, way is the best way. The second thing is I want more. I want more natural resources. I want more land, and this is causing conflict. This is an inherent human desire. You can go several centuries back. It has been happening. Only thing is the cycle of this going up and down was bigger. But now with technology and media, it amplifies more, and the cycles will be shorter. Few decades we see, this getting inflated big, and then only few decades it goes down. So probably we are entering a cycle of where it is going to be more disruptive, and then probably followed by a better cycle.
Thank you so much. I think
last word from me is, I just write about resiliency is the mantra. Resiliency for your business travel, resiliency of your assets, your business operations, and especially train your management on this.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pramod. Great pieces of advice to everyone. Don, what about you?
Yeah, I think succinctly, thanks for the opportunity today. Be aware, don't forget history, partner internally and externally. It's a common enemy here. Don't be frightened of sharing your weaknesses as well as your strengths. Work together internally and externally. You'll see the various groups that I've pulled together over the years. And in 99% of this, the evidence was already there. If only you had the systems in place or the reaction in place, you would have been able to prevent it. Such as the situation I quoted with, well, everything you look at, rarely is there not a sliver of evidence before the event. It's a matter of detecting it. And that's why I go back to Martin's excellence. We need to promote our industry. Our industry is essential. I think I saw somewhere it was actually on the World Economic Conference recently as quoted as number 6 priority.
Right.
We've got to do it. We've got to get in the boardroom.
Thank you so much. And I'd like to add to your statement of when you said don't forget your history. I would also advise people don't forget your school book geography, because geopolitics is all about geography and how politics intersects with that. In fact, there are a couple of lovely books on this, and there's one which I just read again a few months ago called Prisoners of Geography. I think if you read that, you'll realize the world is coming back to what it was 2 centuries back. But I won't steal the thunder from Lloyd. Lloyd, over to you for your takeaway.
Thank you very much. So I would say I'd echo exactly what the previous guests have said. Situational awareness is absolutely key, whether that is physically or whether that is digitally. We need to be aware of our environment, who the malicious players might be in that, and how we're going to counter those. Going back to Martin's initial opening, think like a criminal. I know that, in my early career as a police officer, my shift inspector told me probably within 3 weeks of joining the job that if you want to be a good cop, learn to think like a criminal. And I think that plays true more so now, because the threats are they're in the ether. Always remember those TESOC threats: the terrorism, the espionage, the sabotage, subversion, and organized crime, because they are going to become more prevalent. And I would say, borrow a line from Ian Fleming here, and talk about how we actually deal with threats and risks as they come up. And he used this line, I think it was when he wrote Goldfinger, and he said, once is happenstance, twice is coincidence, 3 times is enemy action. And too often we see the signs, but we don't do anything about them. So it's really important to do something about them when we see them. And finally, and this goes back to the previous points about getting in that boardroom, create a culture of security within the organizations that you deal with. And that is perhaps the most important thing. If you create a culture of security, it no longer becomes a dirty word. It no longer becomes something that we is a nice to have. It becomes something that is absolutely critical to the structure of a business, an organization, and the individuals within that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lloyd. Wonderful. And in fact, since you come from a police background, you say think like a criminal. I spent 22 years in the military, and what we used to be taught is think like the enemy. So it's ultimately the same philosophy, that look at what the bad guys could do and then try and see how you can be resilient, in the words of Pramod. Thanks to everyone. Kundan, your quick takeaway on global security risk scenario for 2025.
I would say, if I had to give a last summary bite of it, picking from Pramod and what Lloyd just mentioned, I think a collaborative resilience approach is the future for all of us. And when we say resilience, it's a way wider term, and the word itself, which encompasses the complete security, risk, compliance, everybody put together into a more collaborative way. Security and risk still live in silos. They are independent people. So Sheila is responsible for risk or security, but then how does one integrate the business into the resilience and make it as a resilience management is key. And in all of this, if we can leverage AI and be more intelligent and sharper than what the damages that AI could do, is the way forward for us. So I would say an AI-based resilience management is an approach that we should adopt, which is collaborative, cohesive, and has the right data into it to give intelligence.
Thank you so much, Kundan. Wonderful. I mean, I think that's something which we should now train our security leaders on, how to use AI proactively to make your organizations more resilient, rather than waiting for AI-based cybercrime to strike you and damage your assets and your technology. I'm very aware that we've exceeded the time of our panel, and which is why Ayushi is smiling at me. But thank you so much. I will not sum up the panel. I think all the speakers have summed it up, your thoughts so well. Thank you so much once again for being part of this webinar. Thank you so much for contributing your valuable thoughts, the lovely and the relevant and pertinent examples that you all quoted. So a big round of applause to all of you, and we look forward to having all of you back on another panel some other day. Do attend Lloyd's other webinars. Great stories. I mean, I've heard so many stories and I love all of them. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks so
much.
much.
Thanks.
That was indeed a very good session, and I would again like to thank all the panelists and Sushil Pradhan for their valuable insights and perspective. This discussion gave a very clear picture of what to expect in 2025, and perhaps it would also help us to navigate through the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. Up next, we have a very exciting unveiling and a demo session. So first, I would like to invite Anushka Mohanto, Team Lead, America's Anemia Risk Intelligence, to unveil our latest report, the EMEA Risk Outlook 2025. After that, we have a presentation on MitKat's AI-driven risk intelligence platform, Data Surfer, by our very own product manager, Abhijit Korde. Guys, over to you.
Thank you, Ayushi, for the introduction, and a very warm welcome to everyone attending the EMEA Risk Symposium 2025. It's an absolute privilege to be here amongst all of you as we explore the evolving risks across the region. So after a series of insightful discussions, I'm honored to present the EMEA Risk Review. It's a comprehensive report that examines the most critical risks impacting countries across the region. This edition highlights key events from 2024 and provides a strategic outlook on the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead in 2025. So without further ado, here we go. So the EMEA risk review it examines risks on a country by country basis, covering important topics such as political changes, economic uncertainty, security challenges, regulatory updates, and environmental risks. Each section provides an overview of the major risks that shaped the past year, along with insights on what to expect in the coming months. This report is designed to help organizations and decision makers navigate an increasingly complex and uncertain world. By understanding these risks, businesses can plan more effectively and industries can strengthen their resilience. The EMEA Risk Review is now available for download, and you can find the link in the chat box. We hope that this document provides you with the valuable insights as you assess and manage risks in the year ahead. With that, I would now like to invite my colleague Abhijit to take us through the next part of today's discussion. Over to you, Abhijit. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Anushka. Hello, everyone. I'll take you through the data surfer demo. I'm sharing my screen, but just Anushka, please let me know when the screen is available. Is it visible?
Yeah, it's visible.
Oh, perfect. So this is our product called Data Surfer. It is an AI-driven, human-assisted risk intelligence platform. It is designed to safeguard people, assets, and the business operations by providing the near real-time, actionable insights on a global operational threats. Now, in today's world, the security and intel people have to take well-informed decisions as the threat landscape is continuously changing. Our objective behind creating this portal or this platform is we would like to assist these people by providing understanding the risk, how it can impact their business, and what can be done to mitigate that risk and cascading it into a crisis. So that's the objective behind creating the data surfer platform. Now the key features and functionalities I'll go through or I'll explain. The first one is the critical event monitoring module itself. So here you can see the most important feature of map view, where we are populating all the risk events across the different geographies on an interactive map. On left hand side, you can see the different screens prepared. That is, first is a geographical alert screen, which gives you access to all the risk events throughout geographies based on 12 risk categories from civil disturbance, crime, cyber to environments, etc. And all these alerts are delivered in tailor made to a user needs so that we don't clutter or overshare the information. Now to make it narrow down the search, we have the second screen, which is a proximity alert screen, where it allows to map all the assets and all the people cluster using the lat longs. The blue pins you can see are the dummy offices that I have mapped. And here you can see and monitor only those risk events which are happening closer to your map location, so that you can focus on only those events which have the highest probability of impacting your business operations. On the right hand side, you can see how the alert card is prepared. Alert card gives you a top level information about what the event is about, under which category it is falling, when it was reported, what is in one line, what the event is about, and what is the probable impact. So here you can see there is a high impact event happening in Bangladesh on top right. If you click on view analysis, it opens a complete detailed alert card. Apart from the top level information, you also get to see the detailed description of the event, which provides you the context why that event is taking place, the impact on business, top level recommendations, along with all the sources that have been used to create this alert. Along with that, on the map, you can see exactly where the impact is seen. And then it also allows you to geofence the impact radius. So you can change the impact radius and see for yourself if there is any asset of yours which are likely to get impacted. This geofencing and asset time categorization basically allows proactive action rather than the reactive response. So this is how we have created the proximity alert screen. Third one is a customizable dashboard. So there are few events which are happening, in live in nature. They are more happening continuously more than 24 hours. So in this screen, every user can customize this screen to monitor a dedicated or a particular event, which is of his or her interest. So once you watchlist this event, you can see the entire timeline and you will start receiving the situational developments. So you will get to know how the event started, how it progressed, what is the current situation. Entire timeline is available to you, which can be downloaded in PDF format as well. Once the event is over, you can remove this event, add another event. So entire screen and dashboard is completely customizable. So this is how it provides, you can monitor specific assets, specific regions, and specific categories. So that's how we have provided the three different screens along with the map view to monitor any specific event. Apart from this, there are different key functions Data Surfer also provides. The list view and event snapshot, every user can create a customized dashboard to monitor any particular geography. Forecast monitoring, like live monitoring, if you want to get updated about all the planned events in your geography. Upcoming events will provide you all the planned events which can be disruptive for your business operations. And historical data gives you all the entire list of archival events which can be downloaded in Excel format for a comprehensive risk assessment. So that completes the critical event monitoring module. Other key functionalities include data analytics. So every user can create a vulnerability assessment for the particular region or for particular any asset. Data Surfer provides the trend analysis, which can be used for risk prediction, and then informed decision can be taken. For example, I have selected Chile for natural disaster in last 1 month. You can see that something happened in February 5th. So there was a major event. You can go to this event, and earthquake event happened, and which is why it is leading as a, it is peaking as a natural disaster event. Here you can see the top regions in Chile which impacted or which have been impacted by natural disaster events. You can see the distribution of impact. There are few events which out of 185 were classified as crucial. That means they had major impact from on the basis of area, duration, and intensity. The heat map provides the concentration of risk, and then it also allows to see that which are the top three risks for a region. So like earth fire, earthquake, bushfire, and landslide are the top three risks for the Chile in last 1 month. So that's how the entire assessment can be carried out for any particular region, for any particular asset. Moving on to the risk reports and advisory section, Anushka already took you through the annual reports. There are also reports which are daily, which are weekly, and there are monthly. So these periodic updates are also available in the PDF format in the risk insight section. Apart from that, there are dynamic reports and advisories, like if there is any virus outbreak, if there is be it COVID or Nipah virus or any other thing, or if there are any elections. All these reports are available, which can be provided in your format with your branding colors as well. You can for customize for which can be be downloaded and circulated within your organization of the data server. And last one is the 24/7 command center. So in case you need any specific, bespoke report or any travel advisory that needs to be custom made for your operation, you can always reach out to team of analysts, put down your needs. So these are the four key functions of data server. From the value wise, there are three main values data server brings. The first one is the risk reduction. So it basically is created to minimize the financial and operational loss with the predictive insights. Second is efficiency. It saves times as it is gathering gathering intel from more than 2 million sources, and then it also helps in reducing the resources with the automated monitoring and analytics. And finally, the integration and scalability. The product is made such a way that it integrates seamlessly with other systems like mass notification, supply chain management, travel management, and it is scalable Yeah, Aishi, back to you. I hope
Yeah,
I was audible. My internet connection
yeah.
just lost.
Towards the end, yeah, it was a little unstable, but
Okay. Yeah, but
it's
I just,
okay.
yeah, yes, no,
Yeah,
I'll just,
please.
in the chat box, you can connect with Kunal to, book for a detailed demo. We'll be happy to give the detailed demo for anyone who is interested. So please feel free to book a demo. Yeah, back to you, Aishi.
Okay. Thank you, Anushka and Abhijit. Just to reiterate, as Anushka mentioned, if you want to download the EMEA Risk Outlook 2025, you can click on the link provided in the chat box. And for more information on Data Surfer, or if you want to book a demo for the tool, you can contact Kunal Solanki, our marketing manager. His contact details are also provided in the chat box. Now we move on to our second panel discussion of the day, which will examine the EMEA Risk and Opportunities Outlook 2025. The EMEA region has recently recorded geopolitically notable events, as we all know, and thus understanding these emerging risks and opportunities about the region would be very crucial in the upcoming year. So I would like to welcome Farah London, Regional Head, MitKat Advisory, to moderate and take the discussion forward. Over to you, Farah. You're on mute. Yes.
Can you hear me? Great. Good morning, everyone. It's going to be a great panel. If you are my speaker, if you could put your camera on. If you're not my speaker, Manoj, please kindly put your camera off. And I look forward to having a riveting discussion. Now, let's talk about risk and opportunities shaping the EMEA region in 2025. We're going to be navigating increasingly complex landscape, which is marked by geopolitical shifts, economic trends, and trade wars, and of course, technological advancements. Now, this is very important for businesses and policy makers to remain agile in these changing times and be forward thinking. Now, while we look at such risks as supply chains, regulatory disruptions, Trump, of course, let's not forget Trump, and security risk. Now, all of these pose challenges, but yet at the same time, it presents opportunities for partnerships, opportunities for growth. Now, I am delighted today we have an esteemed panel of experts from all over the world, and we're going to be really delving into some relevant topics which we're all talking about. I'm going to introduce our panel, and then we're going to jump straight in. So, firstly, we have Mark Nuttall. Thank you, Mark. Welcome. He is globally recognized, an expert in law enforcement, risk management, and anti-money laundering and global security. He has over 25 years of distinguished service in both public and private sector. And that includes, he's worked with law enforcement, He was a detective at New Scotland Yard, and he also worked at Interpol. So welcome, Mark. Next, Dr. Faisal from Saudi Arabia. If you could kindly put your camera on, Dr. Faisal, that would be fantastic. He's an experienced CEO of risk management consulting of ANA Company, while a great background in academia and practical applications. And he was a former head of investigation and development in the Special Military Police Group for Security and Protection in Saudi Arabia. Welcome. Next, from Romania, we have Ciprian Dan Costia. He is the vice chairman of Autonova. Welcome. A leading business group from Romania. He's also board member and chairman of the audit committee of a National Credit Guarantee Fund for Small and Medium Enterprise of Romania. Next, we have Shahadra Bahandre. She is an experienced hand in strategic consulting and intelligence, crisis management and risk analysis for business and corporate and international organizations. She is the founder of Confluence Consultants, and in her last role, she was heading Asia Pacific intelligence team for Barclays. Welcome. And of course, last but not least, Malcolm. In 2022, he is the president of ASIS International, and he's currently the Public Safety Excellence Director for RCU KSA. He has over 25 years international work experience in the public and private domains. He has several senior management positions, and he is a leader and understands defense, law enforcement, oil and gas, banking and finance industry. So welcome, everyone. It's wonderful to have you all here. Now, I'm going to jump straight in. I'm coming to you, Cyprian. Now, I have a very important question for you.
Yes.
Is democracy dead in Romania? What has happened in the last elections? Now, in particular, there was a democratic process. There was the first round, and the current government has dismissed it null and void because of the results. Now, this sends a very worrying messages to other citizens in European countries. Now, I want to get your take on that because it obviously affects inward investment into Romania. What's your thoughts?
I can tell you hi to everybody. I'm very happy to be the speaker which starts this discussion, because from my point of view, and you will see during my intervention, I consider the political landscape being the most important in generating risks all over the world during this year. And this is a continuation of last year, because in the last year, in most countries, most of 50% of the population in the world went to elections. This happened in Romania too. In last year, we had all the possible and impossible elections. There were the local elections, it was okay. There were the parliamentary elections, it was okay. There were the European Union Parliament elections, that was okay. Then there were the presidential elections. And the first round of the presidential elections were cancelled, were annulled by the government. And this happened because we are talking very much about risks. And we can see the technological risks, the misinformation and disinformation risks, which can influence a lot the people. What happened here in Romania was a mix of manifestation of such risks with a very well documented by the intelligence authorities of possible interference from abroad during the elections through an online social media platform. And this is the reason why the first round of presidential elections were cancelled, because actually they do not reflect the reality. Democracy is alive. We will make again the presidential elections in this year in May. But now the authorities will be very careful so that this kind of risks do not manifest themselves during the election process, which is not okay. And this is what happened in Romania. So the democracy is alive. Everything is okay. We have, following the parliamentary elections, the new government, which is a government formed through discussions, through democratic process, transparency was one of the key features for forming this government. And now we are preparing in this year, in May, for the new presidential elections. This is the situation in Romania. We are alive, democracy is alive, but sometimes due to the checks and balances that in democracies we have, there happen such difficult decisions like we had in Romania too, and they can appear some kind of dictatorial decisions, but they are not. They are actually based and they are coming from the checks and balances that the democracy is providing to the people.
Thank you, Cyprian. Very, very well said. Now, Mark, I'm going to jump to you. Given your experience with Interpol, you've worked with different regulatory bodies. Now, how do you see law enforcement and regulatory agencies working together? Now, the reason I ask this, if we look at, for example, cryptocurrency, there's no regulatory existing in such sectors, and we need to see greater cross-border collaboration. So what's going to happen in 2025?
Hello there. So yes, happy to be here always for MitKat's. I'm one of their greatest supporters, and it's good to see everybody online today. So fantastic news. What does it boil down to? Where do law enforcement sit in all of this? It comes down to money, money, money. There are very few law enforcement entities globally that have large budgets, unlimited budgets. Budgets like I live in Dubai in the UAE. Here's kind of an unlimited budget, whereas in many other countries they rely on the cascading infrastructure from either a central government pot, such as the United Kingdom, or they then rely on donor agencies from other countries coming in and assisting with their infrastructure. USAID was one of those donation agencies globally, and unfortunately now it appears to have been cut off at the helm. So as a result of that, the international infrastructure is having an awakening, and certainly from being in Interpol as I was for a number of years, there sits projects that are funded via donor agencies. So where those projects are going to go, what's going to happen with the enhanced data sharing, the intelligence exchanges, the capacity building, the capability processes that are in place, I expect will be subject to some immense both internal and external discussions, and maybe some of the other countries that are wealthy picking up the bill rather than the United States, who has been since about 1961, and before that with the Marshall Plan as well. What I feel is going to happen in terms of those regulatory agencies coming to the table, as well as those law enforcement pieces, is that there seems to be a dramatic shift all of a sudden, and I think it's more again out of the United States pot towards maybe a view of slowing down regulation, and instead of increasing regulation and putting in more and more roadblocks to both business and law enforcement entities, that actually that'll have a little bit of a shake-up, that we'll start seeing some kind of greater common sense across the board in terms of what law enforcement are capable of as the law enforcement pillar, and then what regulatory agencies can and can't do. Because as you've quite rightly stated, there is no yet any international agreement, I will say, rather than legislative protocols country by country, in terms of what digital assets, I'll use that phrase, and look like still, how they are governed, what the processes are for dealing with them. And at the moment, they are seen to be more of a kind of a fiscal, a financial tool and a financial asset than they are per se necessarily a problem case. because in some countries they've related them to having greater cyber problems and cyber threats and being utilised in financial crime, and then some bits of geopolitical instability. However, what the majority of the countries see them as is a financial mechanism that could be used for good. So financial enablement in countries, being able to upraise individuals and communities to be able to use something that's not fixed to, say, the US dollar, for example. So here in Dubai, they're being quite innovative how they deal with that. The commodity center, they're going to have a crypto tower there, which is going to be sparkling and immense. And here you've got various regulators across the Emirates, such as VARA, Virtual Assets Regulation Authority, who are there to be able to say, right, we need a balanced approach to this business versus kind of pleasure and finance. In terms of global capability, as I stated at the start of this, it does boil down to true fiat currency, real money, and how these law enforcement entities are funded. And like I say, unfortunately, there is going to be a significant lack of capital in terms of supporting some of the countries, or many of the countries, should I say, that are less well off than those such as, let's say, the UK, the US, etc. So there's going to be a major shift, I do feel, over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. And then we will have some type of stability into the 5th year, from my perspective and some of the conversations that I've had lately.
We definitely do need it. We definitely do need it sooner than later, I hope. Absolutely. So Dr. Faisal, I want to touch on your doctoral research. You did a doctoral on risk management strategies, and it was to deal with unpredictable events. Now, from your research, what key lessons can you advise businesses in the Middle East to enhance their resilience in 2025?
Yeah, thank you for having me, and also with my respect to your respectful guests. I wish you start with old people, because we're waiting like almost two hours, but it's fine. Regarding to your question, I will come back to your question. Most of us know about the Middle East volatility, which is we're living in let's say unique geopolitical situation, and that led me to think about unthinkable, unpredictable risk or unpredictable events. We should know first what do we mean by unpredictable risk. You know, the unpredictable events or unpredictable risk are rising suddenly and outside the scope of our expectation or normal expectation. If we go back to the quote of former U.S. Secretary of Defense, Rumsfeld, he mentioned something like known unknowns, which after that or before of his quote, there is a Taleb mentioned something like black swan theory, and most of the organizations around the world talking about this theory and how we can handle or manage the situation or the type or about this type of events. So the goal not to manage the black swan or unpredictable event. The goal of my study, how the organization can absorb the shock. It's based on the situation, which is. Let me go back a little bit regarding to unpredictable and black swan. Black swan, little bit above of the unpredictable event because of large scales. Let's say if we talking about corona pandemic 2020. No one expects the world will lock down. It's a few, or if there is any, it's a few people. This is the type of events that we should concentrate when we're dealing with unpredictable. Risk management domain. Many methodology like COSO, ISO 31 can deal with a specific type of risk. However, when we're talking about the unpredictable risk, needs a specific, or at least expand or extend our view of the type of this event. If you ask me, I will come back to your question. If you ask me regarding to what is the key to handle this type of events. First, I can say adopt dynamic risk assessment framework, which is very important to identify and analyze potential unpredictable risk. We're not talking about a normal risk. We're talking about unpredictable. So you have to extend your vision regarding to this type of risk. Second, I can say like collectively organizational agility and adaptability. This is very important too. Also, we have to focus on early warning systems. This is very also important. And based on my study, it's unfortunately a few of type of organizations can take care of this type of risk. What I mean by this risk, unpredictable or black swan risk. Also, there is a very important element or factor in order to deal with this type of risks, which is establishing comprehensive business continuity and a crisis management plan. Also, there is important factors fostering a culture of risk awareness and resilience. The culture, when I did this research, no one can talk about the basic risk. How about you're talking about unpredictable or black swan?
And I'm going to come back to you on that. I want to hear from Shadhara. Now you're a geopolitical expert. Now, what's the top geopolitical risk we expect to see in EMEA in 2025?
Geopolitical. The attention of the situation in the Middle East could be forbidden war, something like this. Targeting the very important infrastructure.
Of course. Shadhara, I'm just going to go to you. What's your thoughts on that?
Thank you so much, Farah. I like a lot of people on the panel. I've been a constant on MitKat panels as well, so it's great to be back. Trump's just come to power and it's been a roller coaster ride. I'm going to try and sum up something which takes experts years. So let me just delve into it. And Farah, please stop me if I'm exceeding the time limit, because this is an area very passionate to my heart. So instead of giving the geopolitical risks, let me just delve down into the methodology, right? So it's better to have the wherewithal than to hear someone say ABC risks. So the way I generally do this, I pick up, not enamored of the man, but Mao Zedong had this theory of nested conflicts, nested warfare, where he would look at 3 levels. So he would start at the local level in China, then the regional war with Japan, and then the global First and Second World War. For me, I look at the Middle East very similarly. The global, the regional, and the local converge to produce risks here. And I'll just quickly list the main elements of them. What is global going to be in 2025? It's going to be the US empire strikes back, right? And this we've seen in the last sort of maybe a couple of months, etc. We met with an expert last week, and he said that the US allies in the region have become so used to a tame US leadership that with the second Trump presidency, they're not going to know what hit them. Partially true, but I think the US in this time of 2025 will be defined by the 4 T's: Trump, tech, trade, and tariff, right? So Trump is essentially the aggressive face of the United States that the Middle East will have to face. The tech is the choice that will have to be made between US and China. The trade and tariffs is, of course, his pump, baby, pump policy, which will have massive effects on the hydrocarbon market. And then the tango is essentially the military conflicts of the world and how the US will play a role in the security conflicts of the world. From a regional level, for years, it's been a tug of war between the Iranians, the Israelis, and the Saudis, the GCC in a way. That rope has given way. Iran has been significantly weakened. They're not out, but they have been weakened. And that sort of led the rope to fall. So what we're seeing in Syria, what we're seeing in Lebanon, possibly Libya, maybe next Iraq, new alignments, new conflict forces, all companies will have to deal with it. There are, of course, trends that can be picked up, but it's a painstaking event. And so your geopolitical intelligence team guys are very, very important. And the last one is the local level. So we're going to be looking at how conflicts and the alignments in Syria, for example, are going to play out. There's a new government, ex-Al-Qaeda roots, but they're making all the right overtures. They've reached out to the Saudis, they've reached out to the Egyptians. They've even said that they're willing to sort of compromise with the Israelis. And then Lebanon now has a new president. How far will they be able to sort of navigate the regional sort of divergences and local divergences within their countries? One of the things that's diverging here, recently, President Trump announced that he's going to withdraw the US forces from Syria. Now, that means that it'll be very difficult for the Israelis to disengage from either Syria or from Lebanon, creating, credibility sort of issues for the new government. So how that's going to pan out, that's going to be the local aspects that we'll have to look at. And there is a lot of theory around this, that when the international, regional, and local factors collide is when massive changes happen in the Middle East. We've seen it during the Soviet times, we've seen it in Iran, we've seen it in the 90s. I don't think in the last 20 years, such sort of gigantic collaborations of these 3 factors have happened. Are we going to see a major shift in the Middle East? What is that going to look like? All things point out to Iran at the moment. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was just in the US. A lot of things have come out. What's that going to look like? Is it going to be maximalist pressure? Is that going to be, a strategic deal? Because the US envoy to Iran is essentially somebody who does not support attacking Iranian nuclear facilities. Or is it going to be that Iran finally gets the nuclear bomb? All of these are trends that we are looking at very, very closely. But I personally feel that the global, the regional, and the local are colliding to produce very, very specific new alignments in the region that will have to be monitored. So I'm going to stop there, and maybe I can take some of these issues in the questions.
What a brilliant, brilliant response. Very, very enlightening. I really love some of the examples used. Now, Malcolm, you obviously experience in multiple sectors, but I really want you to give us some insight of opportunities and threats in, for example, in defense and oil and gas.
Yeah, so good day, everyone. Many thanks for having me here. It's a valid question when we look at from a sector perspective, specifically these 2 sectors and within the region. However, I've seen, the pressing security threats across EMEA is no much, and there's particularly two sectors, is no much different from other regions globally. I mean, the previous panel has shared that with us. You know, business will encounter a range of security threats, both in cyber and physical security domains, and the oil and gas and government is no different. I think what I then do with this question is, you know, just direct it into, you know, a certain direction when we talk about all these listed threats against the business. The big question normally arises, so what? So what? This list of war, terrorism, crime, cyber, what does it mean to the business? Is it truly going to derail the achievement of our objectives? Yes or no? It's either happening right now, and we know there's wars around us, but that's no longer a risk. It's now an issue because, as the risks say, it is not yet happened. When it has happened, it's an issue, it's a challenge, it's going on now, right now. Or it might be future looking, which may pose a risk, right? But is it relevant to my business? Do I use this rather as a source of intelligence? Or how do I see all of this listed threats? How does it impact? So I think, you know, it's back to the basics to contextualize. And maybe definitions may sound trivial, it may sound minor, but when one think about it, risk, the effect of uncertainty on objective, upside or downside, and it brings that upside or the downside one, and you asked opportunities, right? So when I think about this, there's this old saying that entrepreneurship is a risky endeavor. But actually, it's an opportunity endeavor. So my thinking is then, so opportunity actually comes first. Because the business looks for opportunity first to solve a problem. People need energy. That's a problem. We have to supply that energy. The entrepreneurs see that, you know what, I can create this to make the world a better place. Each opportunity. Risk is maybe the one that might derail that opportunity. So that's the reason why they say entrepreneurship is a risky endeavor. But it does not start with risk. A business is not created because of risk. It's the saying of crisis create opportunity. No, there is a need to be fulfilled. It's an opportunity. But as the basic statements say, the effect of uncertainty on your objectives, positive or negative, what does it really mean? So this is where we start asking all of this happening around us, what does it really mean? So I'm going to give you, you know, South Africa, for example, is one of, when you hear about it, is crime. It's a threat out there. Crime is the biggest threat. Now, I go to South Africa and my objective is to take my family and go have a holiday. That's the objective. We want to have a good time. However, car hijacking and so forth is the potential that can happen on the road of our enjoyment. That is the thing that I am concerned because it's contextualized. It is me. It is not that crime is all over there. And I can give you examples where I did not get into that situation because I made it relevant and I ensure that family goes out there and have a good time. So what does actually the war in Israel mean to your business, your oil and gas business? What does the opportunity now happens in Syria, the fact that, you know, the war is now over, business is looking for opportunity. So contextualize. So I'm going to pause there. Thank you.
Now, staying on that, actually, Mark, I'm going to come to you because I want to look at beyond threats. What opportunities do you see emerging in risk management? In particular, how can companies gain a competitive advantage in this climate?
Yeah, so I advise on. You asking me, Ada? Or
yes,
Malcolm?
Mark, please.
Good. Sorry, somebody just overspoke. So yeah, absolutely no problem. I discuss this all the time. So I always look at return on investment, and Malcolm was quite right a moment ago. What does it mean to a business? What, you know, why on earth should they care about securitization of X, Y, and Z, or their cyber infrastructure and how that works for their organization? And I always compare it to, right, okay, what we've got to do now is grind down to the fact that this business is currently, I don't know, might be lacking capital injection, or it's not available to go into market because of X technology cannot be implemented because it's from the US or Israel or wherever, and it can't then be implemented within the Middle East or Asia or wherever else. And it's about them understanding from both a security standpoint, but even more so from a security leader being able to convert that discussion through salesmanship to their leadership and the board to get investment from them to be able to facilitate the business itself. So what I've often spoke about to, say, security leaders, so I chair the Security Leaders Summit at Intersec, and what I've spoke to them about previously is, look, if you've got, say, I don't know, a new arbitration over CCTV cameras, why aren't you using them if you're in a consumer business, fast-moving goods or otherwise, so that CCTV can be used to identify at the same time where customers or clients are moving around within the business, so that you can draw out analytics for the business process itself to be able to generate revenue, to be able to put in marketing processes, and more importantly, to be able to understand where the KPIs are for the business, so they don't have to expend on further stock at X, Y, Z, and to be able to drive your clients around your store in the same way as they do at multiple airports globally. Some airports haven't yet got that gist that the security framework and security infrastructure can be used to generate revenue. And this is where it comes to the fore for a lot of businesses, is that it's basically turning that security operator whose passion is to drive security in the business to a security leader that can drive both revenue for the business but securitization at the same time. It's gaining experience in business, what a return on investment looks like, and how that is perceived to the overall business environment and its pillars. And I think that that's one of the most important things to bear in mind. And I think Malcolm touched on it many times within his discussion, is that you've got to, as a security operator that is now a security leader, have sympathy and empathy for the business itself, because they are paying your check at the end of the day. And in that, you need to understand that your security models can't be inhibiting to the business. And one of the previous speakers, I think it was a gentleman from the travel security industry, was saying exactly that, is how do we balance this? How do we balance having all these security checks and gateways in place when actually the operator, the person that is out in Sierra Leone, for example, can't actually work when they're sent there because of all these security provisionals. So I'll stop there, and I'll let somebody else have some airtime. Thank you.
Brilliant, brilliant. Now, Cyprian, you've got fantastic experience in both public and private sector, especially in financial institutions. Now, how do you see this collaboration going forward with government and businesses evolving to create economic stability across EMEA region?
I would like to start my point of view, presenting my point of view from the fact that in this moment, due to the main risk that I foresee in the next 2-3 years, which I call political disorder, we will have to think very well if politics is following economics, like should be, or the economics is following the politics. And because of the huge uncertainty now in the world, the politics will prevail now, and the economics will follow the politics. But the collaboration will not be a very strong one. This is a result, and I'm coming back to what I said at the beginning of last year's huge elections. And this political disorder landscape that we will see in the next 2-3 years comes exactly from this situation. New leaders were elected in a lot of countries, and these new leaders provided the people with a lot of non-realistic, non-objective promises during their campaign. In one form or another, they will have to implement at least some of those promises. And because they are, some of them, new in the leadership positions that they gained through elections, they will want to have, like it happens in America too, a very tough position. They will not want to negotiate first, but they will want to take decisions first. And then, of course, they will realize that sometimes they did not calculate it or evaluated the consequences, and they will have to face the negotiation with different parties involved. The same will happen with the financial sector. In the financial sector and economic sector, everything is under one form or another connected to searching the profits, the return on investments, searching a very stable and good business environment. And this will generate in the world a capital movement from different parts of the world to another parts of the world. My estimation is that there will be not very good and very strong and very deep collaboration between private sector and public sector, because now the public sector, due to the new elected leaders, will take just decisions. And during this time, the financial sector and the businesses will start to flow in different areas of the world where they feel that they can have at least safe, if not good, profits. This will generate, from my point of view, in Europe, we have huge bureaucracy in Brussels, the capital of European Union. The decision process is very slow. A lot of this very complicated. In Africa, we see a huge fragmentation and a lot of problems. In Middle East, there is quite a lot of instability, but there are also some leaders, some country which can bring like a magnet some capital in that part of the world. But generally speaking, to EMEA region, I estimate that because the financial capital will search stability, they will prefer to go in United States in spite of the beautiful word from the dictionary, which is tariff. It will be a very difficult period in the next years. Anyway, on the long run, it's impossible not to come back to stability. But as I explained to you, for the next 2-3 years, I do not see a very, very clear, stable landscape. I'm rather seeing something like in a desert, where during the evening, you have a beautiful landscape with the sand, but in the morning, everything can be changed. And you can face a lot of winds. This is what will happen globally in EMEA region and in the relation between public and private sector. It's very interesting to have this experience in both sides. People in Europe were expecting more quick decisions from public sector, and the politicians were always looking to make the decisions look good, even though those decisions were not so good. People are fed up with politicians, with promises, and people want, clear decisions. This is why in Europe we are facing the rise of nationalism, and this will also generate a problem in the intersection between the public and the private sector, in spite of searching for stability from the financial institutions' point of view. But the financial institutions will also face the huge developments in the technological area. And because of the very, very large amount of regulations which are in the financial sector, especially in Europe area, I estimate that in the future, the financial sector, if wants a better collaboration with the public sector and with, of course, the final clients, which are the companies, corporations, small, medium enterprises, and largely all the persons, there is needed a dereglementation of the financial sector, including banks, including stock exchanges, including insurance. So this is how I see
Brilliant
movements in the future.
Absolutely. Amma, if I could kindly ask you to put your camera off. Thank you very much. Dr. Faisal, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
So, Dr. Faisal, you know, I'm a big admirer of Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030. It's absolutely phenomenal how much foreign investment it has attracted. And I really would like you to obviously, how do you see emerging opportunities? You know, we've got renewable energy, we've got energy tourism, technology, but how does that compare with geopolitical, regulatory, and cultural risk, in your opinion?
Yeah, first, we know Saudi becomes, or the market in Saudi becomes emerging market. If we're talking about the opportunity, let us mention the Saudi Vision 2030. It's to create a lot of opportunities. Before we're talking about the risk, I would like, if you don't mind, to mention some of these opportunities, which is content of the vision of 2030. The government focusing on renewable energy and green tech. It's the initiative to generate 50% of energy from renewable by 2030, with 100 billion investment in solar, wind, and hydrogen. Also, they're focusing on tourism and entertainment. In fact, there are mega projects. Most of you heard about NEOM, the Red Sea project, Qiddiya. This project targeted above 100 million annual visitors by with more than 1 trillion in tourism investment from the government. It's when talking about the mega project, it's really mega project. Also, the third focusing from the government regarding to the vision of 2030, technology and innovation. Invest 6 and 4% billion in tech fund to build AI, which is a big investment from the government. Also built a smart cities. When you look for the fourth one, industrial and logistics expansion. Its national industrial strategy aims to localize 20% of manufacturing and become a global logistics hub via port like Jeddah Islamic Port. Regardless of this risk, like geopolitical instability and regulation and so on, and cultural adoption, you know, Saudi Arabia and the previous was a conservative country and nation. But regardless of these challenges and risks, there are a huge opportunity pushing the visitor to invest in Saudi Arabia. But how the visitor or the multinational companies minimize this risk, how to manage this risk? I highlight a strategies to maximize upside and mitigate risks. Very important to localize smartly. As you know, the companies should partner with Saudi firms to navigate Saudization. You know, there is a law to any company come to Saudi Arabia to have a percentage of Saudization to hire from the foreigner company. But in order to manage or to mitigate the risk, you have to. This is options for in order to manage the risk. Partner with Saudi firms. Also, the second, leverage government incentives. If Saudi provide special economic zones offering tax holidays, 100% foreign ownership, and customers exemptions. Also, adopt agile compliance. You know, the government, in order to achieve the vision, they try to manage the situation and the changing always the regulation in order to fit in achieving the goals. So you have to adopt agile compliance. Let's say, as example, track regular changes. There is national information centers updates on Saudization tiers. This is some tips for any foreigner company. If you look for also very important point, embed geopolitical foresights, also invest in social capital. This can help any organization to maximize upside and mitigate risks.
Thank you, Dr. Faiz. That was absolutely excellent. And Shadra, I want to talk to you because obviously you've been leading crisis management teams at Barclays. Now, what's the most common mistakes that companies make when they respond to crisis?
So I'll be very honest, it's been my crisis management career is way in the past, but I will pick out some experiences that are particular to the region, right? Firstly, don't think your teams sitting in London, in Singapore, in Europe will be able to respond to the region's crisis, right? Increasingly, you need to have feet on the ground to understand what's really happening. And it's also very, very important to build those local connections. As Dr. Faisal said, number of opportunities are also rising in the region. The risks have to be mitigated. So you have to, build local teams here who are culturally aware, who are sensitive, who know how things are being done. Secondly, I think it's very, very important to add geopolitical intelligence to your crisis management teams. You know, it shouldn't be reactive. You need to understand the scenarios, create long-term planning, practice your scenarios very, very well. Don't bring in the so I used to be at Barclays Bank, as I said, and it was largely a push model. You know, we would make the teams realize how important geopolitics has become. That's changed. It's been a number of years since I've been out of Barclays, but that's changed. And now companies actively elicit intelligence of this sort, but make it actionable, put it in front of your decision makers. And that's a tip for the geopolitical intelligence teams as well. Unless you have a bottom line attached to it, unless you have a very clear impact, it's not going to be taken seriously, right? Intuitions don't work very well with business. So I routinely work with, investors who are coming to the region, funds who are, so financial services is very big in the UAE, it's big in Saudi, it's starting to grow in Qatar. They want to understand, obviously there's a lot of investable capital in the region, so they're attracted by that, but they're very, very spooked out by the entire volatility crisis, right? So it's very difficult to make them understand geographically that the UAE is here and that the conflict is happening somewhere else. But all of that has to be made very, very actionable. And so that's something that I would tell everybody who's doing both geopolitical intelligence, crisis management, and it's massive opportunities in the region. And if you want to take advantage of that, Hyperlocalization, absolutely. Be completely in touch with the local cultural nuances, understand how the risks are evolving, and then make your analysis very bottom line oriented, very corporate in terms of the presentation. And I think the decision makers will act on it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Now, Malcolm, you obviously in KSA, you're doing a public safety excellence director role. Now, how do you see public safety and the corporate security aligning in 2025?
Yeah, so this structure, you know, is the public safety includes security. So it's basically one organization. But when I look at overall partnerships with, you know, other agencies and even private partners, as we know, the triple P thing that goes around, there's of course huge opportunity for these partners to really get together, have a common goal, you know, and go forward. Like, for example, you know, engage in community policing. There's initiatives that they do together. But I want to, you know, take a step back and discuss what strategies are there really to ensure this partnership is there for the long run, it is built on certain foundations. And I think about it, I think about my recipe that ensured me a 32-year partnership with my wife. And, you know, if I think about it, I already had this, you know, kind of women in my mind, you know, my rose that I'm going to pick. And when I saw that rose, I picked it, and we actually worked on three things. It's trust, needs, and communication. And I apply that even to the partnerships with the organization right now. So if I think about it, I conduct, you know, what the stakeholder analysis and identifying not only the partnerships, meaning government, as well as private partnerships, but identifying the roles within that particular environment. So that I mention role specifically because that role may stay there forever, but the person may change. But I know that role is the important role to build this partnership based on my recipe of trust, needs, and communication, because ultimately, that department also has needs to fulfill. I think about my regulatory partner. That regulatory partner wants to see compliance. That person, but I mean that role in that organization wants to achieve. Me represent the organization want to sometimes have some leniency on this regulatory pathways, or we want to make sure that we're on the same path. So needs are important element, right? But based on trust and communication, of course, further that trust, I've seen relationships with the specific individuals in, I say individual, but I mean the roles in these organizations, the respective partnerships has gone so far that we can achieve from many things, and not through only formal MOUs and the, you know, the normal things that we're doing, but because of that recipe of trust, needs, and communication. And hopefully it will also be more than 32 years with them. Thank you.
I love that. I love that. Now, we've only got 2 minutes left. Now, what I would love is 30 seconds from each of you on trade wars, the trade wars which are rising, coming up. Please give us a 30-second take. Cyprian.
Okay, thank you very much. The trade war is already within and near us. It's present in our life. My opinion, as I told you, is that the capital, yes, will flow in US in the next 2 years, because inside US there will be provided more safety and possibility of generating profits. But looking back to EMEA region, my opinion is, and let's not forget history, geography, and let's look for the future too. We can be the balance between the tectonic plates that represent the US and China and Asia generally. We can be the middle point of intersection for mitigating the global risks. And I think it will happen in the future. In spite of the huge differences in the EMEA region, Europe will represent the strength of economy, Middle East will represent the wisdom of decision, and Africa will represent the beauty of the future. Thank you.
Beautiful. I love that. It was poetry. Mark, please, 30 seconds.
Come to the Middle East, ladies and gentlemen. 1.7 trillion asset under management in Abu Dhabi at the moment. I counteract Cyprian's points a little bit in that I feel that this is the safer region, actually. That businesses are drawn here, that capital executes out of here, that corporate entities actually want to be here within this region, and the securitization piece that you get in this region is like no other. I feel far safer in this region than I would in Louisiana in the US, for example. So come to the Middle East, come and do business and feel safe and secure, and especially with companies like MitKat and others around with their data surface system. Fantastic. Thank you.
Wonderful. And Shadhara, 30 seconds, please.
Okay. So there are 4 stories in the Middle East. Of course, we know about the Israeli expansion, Iranian weakening, Turkey, but there is an economic story coming out, especially about the GCC, right? It's a place where America first fits in beautifully with the regional ambitions, notwithstanding inherent tensions with President Trump's agenda. US companies, especially in tech, investing big time in Saudi Arabia, in UAE, G42, one of the biggest AI companies in the world, Microsoft's investment, Project Transcendence, AI, Google in Saudi Arabia, financial services, there are a lot of opportunities. We'll have to see how this Trumpian whip cracks in the region and how going forward the companies will choose between China and the US. That's going to be one of the major risks here, but plenty of opportunities. And I am a fangirl, so unapologetically, I like being in the UAE.
Thank you. Thank you. And Dr. Faisal, 30 seconds on your take on trade wars.
Yeah, to win the trade war, just in short paragraph or sentence, come to Saudi Arabia.
I love that. That is so well said. Come to Saudi Arabia. Yalla, let's go. Malcolm, please, 30 seconds.
Yes, so I think when I look at Trump's agenda, how he describes Africa and how he's going to withdraw, for example, South Africa and that trade kind of things, it brings me back to my last conversation is how do you then establish that trust? How do you really balance out your common needs and communicate through and find a solution to then have trade that is beneficial to all?
Wonderful. Now, just quick synopsis here. So we've got Mark said security models need to have sympathy and empathy for business. Dr. Faisal said, and I love this, adopt risk dynamic framework, extend your vision. Beautifully. And Cyprian, democracy is very much alive. Yes, that's great to know. Fantastic. Shadhara, tug of war, the rope has given way. I really love that. And Malcolm, back to basics. Entrepreneurship is an opportunity end of hour. Thank you very much. I could listen to you all day, but unfortunately, our time has come to an end. And I thank you so much for your incredible insight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A great session, everyone. Thank you, Farah, and our esteemed panelists for their valuable contribution. Your insights have provided us with deeper understanding of the economic, political, and security challenges unique to the EMEA region. During the session, I also noticed that there are a lot of comments and questions in the chat box, and I encourage to keep them coming. The panelists will reply to them whenever they can through the session. Now we move on to our third and the final panel discussion, which is the intersection of technology, travel security, executive protection, resilience, and duty of care. This session will be moderated by our Director of Strategic Initiative, Ranjit Sinha. Ranjit sir, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Aishi. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all our panelists and viewers from across the world. We have had some interesting discussions, past couple of hours, lovely views, great on the point. And I think it is awesome to hear the comments and insights from the experts, which I think being the final panel for today, we can take a lot of it from what has already happened and then build on from there. Right. So today, welcome to the third panel, which is basically dealing with the intersection of technology, travel security, executive protection, resilience, and duty of care in today's security scenario. I'm sure these are the aspects which are very, very close to all of us, all the security professionals that are there. And in today's dynamic security landscape, the organizations must navigate a very complex and evolving risk environment to protect the people and assets, where the domains of technology, travel security, executive protection, resilience, and duty of care converge to ensure the safety and continuity of the operations. There are many examples, regarding success and failures of the aspects of all these, which we are discussing at the global and regional level for the past few years. And actually, with what discussions we have been having and what we have been seeing, 2025 looks to be no different than this. We have already heard Professor Martin about what is good security, and the other two panels discussed the risks and opportunities both at the global and the EMEA regional level, be it the Russia-Ukraine conflict, issues in the Middle East, or in Africa. Therefore, I'll not waste any more time and straight away lean on to my August panelists to move the discussions ahead and enrich all of us attending here today. Now, the panelists come from an extensive experience of not only looking after security, but also conceptualizing and developing the solutions related to security. So what I'll do is I'll go through a quick introduction to the panel of stalwarts that we have today in no particular sequence, and then we can straight away get into the discussion part. To start, we have Bruce McIndoe, the Senior Advisor, MitKat Advisory. I mean, he's a recognized leader. Many of us have heard him. I mean, most of us, right? Heard him speak, heard his insights. He's a leader, author, and a speaker in risk management, technology, geopolitical risks, and intelligence. You name it. He's one of the foundations, I must say, right? As a founder of iJet World Aware, one of the world's leading open source intelligence providers, he's led the development of continuous risk management model, the CRMM, and has been a thought leader in providing integrated risk management solutions to protect people, sites, supply, and information assets. He's also developed the TRM maturity model, the TRM3, as it is known, adopted by the Global Business Travel Association, and also chaired the development of TRM3 assessment tool. He was also recognized by the Business Travel News as one of the top 25 most influential executives in the business travel industry. He was also recognized as a top 40 global thought leader by the Life Safety Alliance. Prior to leaving the government mark in 1999, Bruce worked with several agencies, including the NSA, CIA, Department of Defense, and NASA. During this time, he was an early pioneer and practitioner of OSINT in the national security domain. The growing availability and success of using OSINT to inform reporting to meet national intelligence requirements led Bruce founding iJet, which is now World Aware. He advises leading global corporations and mentors technology and intelligence startups. Welcome, Bruce. We are indeed fortunate to have you with us today. Our second panelist, Sahima Datta, leads the global security programs, including the deployment of enterprise security solutions across all sites and geographies in Shell PSC, a leading global energy company, and is based out of Hague, Netherlands. In her 3 decades of security career, she has served the government of India by working in the world's largest and only paramilitary industrial security solutions provider, the CISF, the Central Industrial Security Force. This also included a stint as a civilian police officer with the United Nations in Kosovo in 2005 and 6. In the corporate sector, she has predominantly worked in managing regional security operations in South Asia, designing enterprise security solutions, corporate security, security consulting, and corporate social responsibility. Welcome, Saima. We are looking forward to learn from your vast experience today. Next, welcome Peter. It's the EMI Corporate Security Manager for Gallagher Insurance. He has 22 years of experience in the British Army's Royal Military Police, including close protection operations for the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, His Majesty's Government. Post that, Peter has worked in corporate security and resilience across the manufacturing, finance, telecommunications, commercial real estate, and most recently, the insurance sectors. Outside of his corporate roles, Peter brings a wealth of experience within the security sector and has dedicated many years of pro bono service to the security sector. Peter served 7 years on the Security Institute's board of directors, including as a deputy chairman and chairman until 2023. He serves as a trustee of the Cross-Sector Safety and Communications Charity and is also deputy chairman of the London Resilience Forum Business Sector Panel, contributing to mitigating the impacts of Brexit, terrorist attacks, and COVID-19. Currently, he is involved with Our Safer City, a consortium of organizations for the prevention of violence against women and girls and domestic abuse, which forms part of City of London Crime Prevention Association. Welcome, Peter. It is indeed a pleasure to have you here today and learn from you. Jason, who's the Security and Anti-Illicit Trade Manager for the Nordic region for BAT. He comes with 30 years of experience in private, corporate, and consulting roles with Westfield, Bloomberg, Philip Morris International, and British American Tobacco. Jason has lived and worked across Australia, Singapore, Hong Kong, Switzerland, United Kingdom, and Denmark. Vast space. He's particularly well known for his ability to collaborate effectively and build high-performing teams. A recent graduate in international relations, Jason combines continuing studies in risk, crisis, and resilience management with a busy working career. He is based in Copenhagen, Denmark. Welcome, Jason, and we're looking forward to hearing and learning from you today. Botan Osman is the CEO of Restrata and co-founder of its software venture, also leading the company's innovation in security, safety, and emergency response technology. Previously, he held the advisory position in government IT modernization. His expertise spans technology-driven risk management, strategic consulting, and digital transformation, making him a key figure in advancing connected resilience solutions globally. Welcome, Botan, and we are looking forward to benefit from your knowledge and experience today. Leticia Minia. She is the Global Security Capability Manager at Unilever, responsible for advancing security technology and professional development across the organization. With extensive experience in physical security, risk management, and security strategy, she leads initiatives to enhance security capabilities and promote diversity in the profession, including chairing the Women in Security People program. She also serves as chairwoman of ACES UK and has held senior security roles at Tesla, Amazon, Lloyds Banking Group, overseeing physical security design, risk mitigation, and global security operations. She is currently based out of London. Welcome, Leticia, and we are looking forward to your insight based on your expertise on the subject today. Last but not the least, Amit Jain, MD and founder of TechnoPurple. It's a pioneering company specializing in real-time tracking and automation solutions. Under his leadership, TechnoPurple has grown into a global player, providing innovative software for security and location tracking across industries. He's also been awarded by many organizations for his work. With over 14 years at the helm, he has built a strong team and driven the adoption of digital processes to enhance operational efficiency, eliminate manual reporting, and prevent manipulation. Several clients in over 30 countries, he continues to lead TechnoPurple in delivering cutting-edge solutions that transform businesses through automation and innovation. Welcome, Amit, and we would love to hear about your first-hand experience in building a tech brand, which is widely being used today. So with this, round of introductions and the kind of panel that we have today, I think we'll straight away go into the discussion with Jason. The first question coming up for you. We have seen the panels today discussing what is there, what are the options, what are the various risks. So the question for you is, how have recent geopolitical events impacted business travel security in the EMEA region? And what lessons can we learn from the same for implementing at the global level? Over to you, please. Jason, you're on mute. Yeah.
Sorry, is that better?
Yes, can hear you.
Yes. Yeah, so I'll say it again. Good afternoon, everyone, and it's great to be here. Really nice to be such a part of a small part of such an impressive panel. So, look, my 2 cents on this, and that's all it's worth, is that I'll try and last at least 10 seconds before mentioning Donald Trump. But prior to Donald Trump, we were a bit obsessed in the last month or so with him, and certainly I am. But we probably still forget a little thing called COVID-19. That a lot of the world's forgotten about. And I often speak to people in a crisis management role, as we all do, and I remind them that we spoke about the Spanish flu for over 100 years, yet COVID-19 is almost a dirty word in most organisations. So I think the fact that COVID-19 almost completely dismantled the airline industry has had a massive effect on global travel. So it's not just geopolitics. We see when you travel business class. Business class used to be the prize of all prizes for any employee that gets to utilise it. Now, often business class is just as disrupted as any other class of airlines. So we're seeing not just the ramifications of the fact that hundreds of thousands of people who were very, very good at assisting us to travel around the world lost their jobs, but entire careers came to a standstill. And then when we reintroduced flying and travel, and certainly business travel across the globe, and all those connecting ports of thought as well, from taxi drivers to pick-up locations to courier services to assistance companies, it's really come back with quite a slow grind. So I'm often dealing with the travel security mechanisms that aren't, while they may have a direct involvement with a war in the Middle East or an awkward politician in some countries, they're still down to the bread and butter of just how do you get around the globe now in a super globalized world and a super interconnected world that we've become so reliant on. So I think that sometimes the geopolitical aspect can mask what are very mundane and boring problems around the globe. So to answer your question a little bit more fully, I think, without going into a whole spiel on international relations, we're aware of all those problems. They certainly are problems. But for your day-to-day travelers, I think some of the problems are around consensus too. I'm just dealing with an issue in my environment at the moment, but I also dealt with it about 12 months ago, which is around a newer generation of employees not being quite aware that they have to use a travel application for when they're away, but they're concerned about things like geofencing and geolocation now, whereas these are sort of situations that we didn't really have to deal with previously. We've got GDPR requirements right across the EU that are incredibly stringent. So contractually, it can be very difficult to start to get these things to work. So while at the front end, we're very focused on really the simplistic approach of looking after our employees, colleagues, peers once they're out and about, it can become increasingly difficult to do that amongst the geopolitics of the region. We're in an unprecedented time to some extent around global warfare, but anyone that quickly picks up a historical reference book will realize we've really been never out of global warfare. There's constantly wars going on. So there's conflict going on. There's an abundance of bad politics at the moment, and there's abundance of bad leaders. And we're seeing things like, I was on some LGBTQ programs previously in years gone past, that we spent an enormous amount of time and were really, really successful. Those sorts of programs were not just around Trump, but across Eastern Europe in general. They would be challenged increasingly now. And the sort of brief that I would be giving to staff that those policies pertain to today would be increasingly much more difficult and more often than I would have done a year ago. So, and I think those sorts of, that sort of advice is changing. So on a smaller scale, we're not just looking at a widespread effect of what a Republican government might say in the US and what effect that might have. Someone landing in Lithuania tomorrow, someone landing in Poland tomorrow, they may have a whole suite of differences that they may have not had before. So I do think that the open warfare, the 24-hour news cycle has made it increasingly difficult. But just little things like trying to get people to buy into some of the things that as security professionals, we know they work because we do them preemptively. And then when we're in a reactionary phase where we have to pull people out of a country, perhaps, if something's gone awry, we know they work, and we know it's a pretty simple process for employees to follow. That's fine. Lithuania is a great country.
I think, yes, I'm sure, you can speak much more, but no, very interesting points that you have brought out. The compliances, change management for people to realize, right, as on continuous risks that are going on. And we'll come back to a few of that in a while. So next, coming on to you, Peter, your experience. Now, how can organizations ensure business continuity when key people are traveling to such regions which are prone to sudden disruptions, and of course build resilience into their travel security plan, which will ensure that they can, any unexpected disruption can be sort of taken care of? So how can they do that?
Rajiv, thank you, and thank you for the invite to the Risk Symposium. I've enjoyed so far. Look, business continuity and resilience are embedded into travel risk and travel security. The key element here, I think, was key personnel, etc. So I think a lot of my colleagues would argue that our sort of travel risk management sort of processes and programs are set for everybody, but appreciate that we do need to take some additional steps and more detail in some respects around key personnel and high risk travel. So initially, certainly that risk assessment process is going to be very detailed, looking at those geopolitical issues and risks. Any travel, you've got to bear in mind the context in which, not only the country you're going in, but also the context in which you're actually traveling. The geopolitics at the moment, the speakers have articulated that, and I don't really want to go over too much old ground, but those risk assessments do need to be bespoke. The crisis management element, those elements need to be embedded in it. You need to be using your business as usual crisis management structures and solutions in travel risk in the same way as any other risk and any other interruption that the business may get. So, close working relationship with your crisis management business continuity teams is key. You might be part of an overall structure that actually has all that in with security, or it may be fragmented a little bit into different areas. But as long as you're working closely, exercising and testing, etc., is really key. Next area, I suppose, is making sure we train and prepare our people. They are risk informed about the travel, that they're where they're going, making sure they get the appropriate briefings. They understand those risks, whether or not it's safety related, whether or not it's security related, potentially maybe it's culturally related. The do's and the don'ts of being in certain parts of the world. We need to make sure that they are well aware of what needs to be going on. Training, yes, there can be online and everything else. There may be some, especially in some of these more hostile environments, where hostile environmental training may be required. And certainly on the first panel, Lloyd touched on it around cyber and digital, taking devices with you now anywhere globally. There are risks, but in certain countries and certain regions, those risks are, obviously are heightened, and we need to make sure that our people don't break the rules. Despite what Lloyd was saying, we need to try and make sure that we can monitor those and make sure that those rules aren't broken. Maintaining effective communication. One of the key areas there is making sure we're getting real-time updates from on the ground, so we know what's going on, and we can feed that into the traveller, making sure that they are situationally aware. Another thing that was mentioned in the first panel, making sure that our travellers are situationally aware. They may well be well-versed and mature travellers, and some may not be. At the end of the day, we have different types of risk groups. We can't just put everybody in a bucket and say that that's a traveller and everybody gets treated exactly the same. There can be nuances, and the context is quite key around that. And we need to make sure that our communication plans and the different devices we can use. Certainly, Jason mentioned there about apps. Certainly for me, I advocate having the app on your phone. It's a bit like an insurance thing, forgive the pun there, but better you have it there and then, and you never use it. But in a crisis, in a situation, it's simple and easy to use. A check-in, an SOS button, you can start that two-way communication very, very quickly, and it's exceptionally important in this day and age. Insurance and medical support. Yes, that's part and parcel of your travel risk management. Typically, you going to a provider for that to make sure you've got that comprehensive cover, and it will react quickly in an emergency. And sadly, it happens all too often. And many of these things are not necessarily security situations; they're medical. Somebody becomes unwell whilst traveling. Some people, unfortunately, do tend to travel when maybe they shouldn't. So, making sure, we are aware of some of those issues, we can plan around that is quite key at times. Flexible travel arrangements. We've got policies, process and procedures, but at the same time, you've got to have a degree of flexibility around those. It's not necessarily in our sort of vernacular for the business or security side of things to be telling the business no to something. We have policies and procedures. If you need to move outside of those, there is typically an exceptions process where it's risk assessed and the business makes a decision. That may be a key of how many people will be physically on a plane, or how many, the whole executive might be in a certain location. Those things need to be risk managed and further things put in place. Having backup plans. I mean, at the moment, obviously, a lot of people are talking about sort of travel and business back into Israel and Tel Aviv, making sure that you've got those backup plans for if it goes wrong. At the moment in Israel, as many people know, they're in the phase 1, the first 6 weeks, and there are several phases thereafter. The longer that goes on, I would argue the risk is increasing that something will happen. And if you have travelers on the ground, you need to make sure that if air is no longer available, land routes, and you've got those plans in place to do that. Leveraging technology, and it's part and parcel of this piece, making sure that we've got the tools. And I think Jason touched on that again a little bit in his piece, whether it's a tracking tool, whether or not it's dropping a flag in a map to say, look, currently this is where I am. Am I on track with, the itinerary that maybe I've submitted to the business? Or maybe there's another tracking tools where we are physically live tracked, and we tend to find those are the ones that are used in higher risk environments. And as was said again by Jason, geofencing, to create that sort of bubble around them. So actually, if something moves outside of that area or moves into an area where they really shouldn't, we get that type of alert. And then lastly, post-travel debriefings, exceptionally important. Great that everything goes well. And if that's as much as it is, everything went well, there is no problems, then fine. But if there are some, learning from them, making sure that gets fed back into the process, that plan, do, check, act, your continuous improvement, Deming cycle, whatever everybody understands it to be, especially if you're aligned to ISO certifications and things like that, it's really important to make sure you've got that data, because again, that management information pushes into your governance structures. I think I'll leave it there. I've touched on it over a high level there, but
great. I think yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of ground covered, and great answers. And in fact, it sets up the discussion further and sets up for Bruce exactly. So Bruce, coming on to you, with whatever we are discussing. In fact, you have been instrumental in developing the TRM. So what role does a robust corporate travel security management policy ensure compliance and well-being of the traveling employees? And also, how does a TRM platform fit into all this, especially when you're operating in a high-risk zone?
Okay. Well, let's see. A well-structured TRM policy is essential to ensuring compliance and well-being. Peter just gave us a mini education on the entire spectrum of TRM. The policy needs to convey that exists and their role in it, right? I like to focus on, and of course, legal and compliance drives the need for policy in a TRM program for most organizations. But I love to talk about well-being. And well-being right now is probably the most critical thing for our travelers and our executives, because of the continuous crisis environment that they're dealing with, whether it's global or whether it's weather delays and other issues that are occurring to them. And so when you think about policy, what I like to see beyond traditional TRM verbiage is focusing on mental health. So looking at policies that look at travel fatigue and safe lodging and balanced work life and those kinds of things, I think are really important. So in a nutshell, the travel platforms, they're essential. There's no question that, we need technology to deliver, and monitor 24/7 and deliver this kind of information out to the travelers and provide the organization awareness if something goes awry. So that's, and you can't scale. if you have a few travelers, you can do it by hand. If you have tens or thousands, you can't, right? So technology is really key. So, for like high risk travel, I would say not key, but they're vital and essential, right? And Peter hit on a number of issues in that regard that, you're out there. First is, should I be there in the first place? If I'm going to be there, what should I have to mitigate and to help protect me against the risk environment there and all of those things. So the technology can help through online training and awareness and those kinds of things. And so I guess, and the tracking piece of it, when most organizations, when they put people in high risk or, countries or situations, will say, you must enable that app. We must, know where you are. But I think the most essential thing that I've seen in 25 plus years is multimodal capability to be able to reach out and get help when I need it. And getting that response, whether it's physical or otherwise, we need to have that high risk traveler needs to have multiple paths to getting help, and that's how I would sum it up.
Okay, thank you so much. I think multimodal communication, whether to reach out, to get help, everything based on a good TRM platform and robust policies, I think will make the difference. Right. So from here, coming on to you, Amit, with the kind of technologies that the region is employing now, most of the countries are undergoing transformation. They've got AI, biometrics, everything coming up. A lot of border controls, smart airports being built up. How is this impacting travel for the executives and high-risk professionals? Is there any change, or how is it enabling? How is it working out?
Yeah, thank you, Ranjit, for this question. Glad to be a part of this panel, having such stellar speakers. Yes, you had a very good me. Somebody is either planning or undergoing this happening within a city at the same time. So I'll ask. At Mumbai airport, I'm taking an entry at the airport, just showing my face on a scanner, and the doors open automatically. Where the digitalization journey is fully completed and it's all free, nothing like certified, some charge or anything. Just upload your boarding pass and you get the entry. But in the same city, last evening I was at Gateway of India, where the Taj attacks happened on 26 November few years ago. When the attacks happened, a lot of security equipment and personnel were deployed. For the first few years, everything was being put to good use. But yesterday, what I saw, I felt that everybody visiting that place is putting themselves to risk. The equipment is non-functional. The personnel which is deployed over there are all sunk in their mobile phones. So when it comes to securing our high-risk personnel, I think those people will go into areas where the digitalization is fully completed or it is under planning. But it's our responsibility to ensure we invest in technology so that we cover up the gaps that are found on ground. So for far too long, I think we have relied heavily on manual security protocols, human intuition, and static planning. So we need technology to now get the boring stuff done, because this boring stuff is that's the name, boring. It becomes after a while very boring, and people stop doing their regular practices and checks, and processes go for a toss. But when we keep technology to track all the boring stuff, we ensure that the executives who are traveling are safe within the premises and when they are outside the premises as well. Okay. And so we need to invest in tech which makes the entire process very proactive and move away from the reactive things that we have been seeing for so long. And location intelligence is one of the most important factor, because when it comes to executive travel, one thing that is always changing is the location of the executive, right? And location is impacted by so many aspects: where they are, what time they are, and all the factors around it. So the human anxiety around this aspect of securing the travel of executives. And we cannot do this suddenly. Please mind well, there is no magic wand that tomorrow we decide to do this. We need to overcome this problem of how to ensure the boring thing gets executed. So we need automated workflows which ensure that everything is done as per schedule and all the deviations that are highlighted are properly checked. Like as part of my work of implementing security patrol management at many of the facilities, when we enter the command center of this large corporation, we see best of the technologies, because we are talking of securing travel of executives, but I want to take a step back. Even the facilities sometimes are not very secure for the executives. Like we see best of the command centers with the biggest of the screens, the best of the cameras, but the guard at the gate is completely on paper, marking the entry exit on a register and those kind of stuff. So in such a scenario, we cannot expect the expect the executive to be safe when he's outside the premises, when that's not the situation we'll be able to deliver within the premises. So I think we need to have a 360-degree view of all these things and then take corrective measures. More on what tools to be used, I'll come back if time permits. Yeah, over to you.
No, Amit, I think thank you so much. And one great point that you brought out, that the same area probably using some other form of credential to enter and identification, and it changes. Similarly, this changes over the region depending on the kind of technology that is being employed by different countries. So, Bhutan, coming on to you, how can companies leverage real-time data analytics and geofencing to enhance travel security in the region, especially when you have different dynamics and privacy laws? How can you basically balance privacy concerns and with the need to track employees for security purpose?
Yeah, Rajat, thanks, and good to be here with such a distinguished panel and some friends also on the panel. So good to see everyone. So just following on from kind of what everyone else has pointed to, I think the challenge is about predictability in terms of if you want to know where the population is. As Bruce said, you got 10,000 people, even 1,000 people, and you want to try and understand their proximity to potential risks so you can either notify or do something about it. The fundamental problem is the predictability of where somebody is, because we're all unpredictable, right? And so that's why no single mode of people location is good enough to cover sort of everything that happens. As travelers, as people are on sites, as people go into offices, as they work from home, in each of these scenarios, depending on the time of day, there is a different mode of location awareness that fits better, right? So if I'm entering the facility that Amit has mentioned, then on that door, instead of a clipboard, maybe it's best that I tap into something so that the site understands that I'm there. When I'm traveling as an executive, if my flight details are in a TRM platform, but that can also be overlaid with the location of my phone, but also my calendar may be in there. So there are all of these different elements that come together. Now, this is obviously a problem that we as Restrata and Resilience OS have worked for the last 4 or 5 years to focus on solving. And the conclusion we came up with was that there's no silver bullet. So there isn't like a thing that you can, if you just give everybody this one thing, then it's fine, right? There's no silver bullet. And so what you need is a mosaic of different sources, but that can create a lot of noise. And it can, potentially give you too many data sources to look at. The way we approach this is we created something called a location confidence engine that takes all of these sources, and depending on the time of day and the particular pattern of behavior, predicts the highest probability location for that individual. So if I have a flight record to Paris for the next 2 days, I'm going to be within Paris most likely for the next 2 days. And if a GPS ping hits, then I'm going to be within that sort of area for the next few hours, right? And then it kind of reduces. So technology can help us do things at scale with an algorithm that is just not possible to do if you're a human trying to look at kind of multiple screens. Now, back to the privacy point is, okay, so if I have a digital twin of my population that I'm protecting, and that is as accurate as possible, how do I then enable, what does that then enable me to do? Well, you've mentioned geofences, you mentioned sort of threat radiuses around things that happen. That enables you to do everything else more effectively, right? So it enables you to go from something has happened to I know now who's impacted within minutes rather than sort of hours of, we've all done it, right? Where we call the facility and say, hey, listen, how many people have you got? I've got 50. Let me just check the list. I think we've got a visitor management system. Let me just check that. And it takes us 3-4 hours at best to genuinely understand the population that might be impacted. And the reality is true action only starts when you have that knowledge. And so if you bring all of that forward and we deploy technology today, not to replace us, but to empower us to make decisions quicker, that's the role that technology can play. And I'll just touch on the privacy point and I'll hand back. Actually, what I've described, does two things. A, when we have what I would call close proximity tracking for individuals, these apps now have to be privacy by design. We cannot continue to put privacy settings of turning off my location in setting layer 5 so that nobody finds it. Because actually it's counterintuitive, because all it does is the person finds it, switches it off, and then they can never find it again anyway to switch it back on. So put it right at the front, empower them to put them kind of on and off. Think about the individual's experience. If you get between, a person's YouTube viewing time because your tracking app is killing their phone battery, your app's being deleted. Doesn't matter how safe and secure it keeps them, it annoys them, and the app's being deleted. So I think for this industry that wants to increase app adoption, we need leaps and bounds beyond where we are today, which is we just expect people to download, and we know that the adoption rates are very low. And as Peter rightly said, these apps can be in the moment very important to have there, but they'll only be there if it doesn't negatively impact me. I probably missed a couple of points to your question, but I can always come back to them. But hopefully that answers the question.
I think covers what we are looking for, and especially great mentioning about the apps, the privacy issues, that it should be, people should be enabled, right? But it also should balance out the risk that is there where they are traveling.
Just put it on the home screen. That's what we do. Just on, off. It's easy.
On, off, home screen. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But yes, people have to be enabled. People have to be told that, yes, this is something that needs to be done. This, and especially, in times when people are working remote, people are working from home, and we are still supposed to look after them, right? And from this point, I'll come on to Saima, ma'am. So the question for you, you are looking after people all across in a multinational company, different regions. So how does the concept of duty of care evolve, with this kind of remote work, digital nomads, people who are there, hybrid business models who are there? Is there any key difference when you're looking at duty of care between various countries, and how do you address them?
Thank you, Ranjit. Actually, when you send me the question that you're going to ask me a question on duty of care, I was a little surprised, why has this concept again suddenly reared its head, concept of duty of care? And I was led back to some months before when there was a chatter in the Europe region about 4-day week, 5-day week. And then in India recently, about 70 hours week, or 90 hours week, where you could probably not stare at your wife's face. So these kind of stuff actually brought into the center of this conversation the concept of duty of care. Is it about hours of work that you put your employees to work, or is it something much beyond that. And to me, as a security professional, having been a part of the duty of core of an organization, having given security, that is to protect lives, to help reduce injuries, this concept is much more. It is fundamental to any organization. It is woven into the fabric of any organization. It is a commitment that an organization makes to prioritize health, security, safety, and mental well-being of its workforce. Yeah, it is basically a broad spectrum of obligations. And I use the word obligations with responsibility, okay? It is an obligation to foster a nurturing and secure environment. But is it legal or is it moral? That is the first concept of duty of care. In many countries, it is legal. They have laid down specific rules for safety. They've laid down specific rules for security, for health. But more than legal, I think the legal obligation comes from common law. A human being must have duty of care to another human being. It is this basic common law which sets the principle of duty of care everywhere. So it is legal and it is moral. The second concept of duty of care, it is proactive, which means you have to manage and mitigate potential risks and hazards that you've already assessed. It is proactive in nature. An employee cannot just respond to an incident and say that I have done my duty of care. No, it has to reduce or mitigate those risks to what in my organization we call alarm, as low as reasonably possible. We can't mitigate all risks, right? So as low as reasonably possible so that the employee feels cared for. That is the basic thing. That is the second scope, second dimension. And what is the third dimension? Pre-COVID days, it was very easy to do that. We all sat in a specific place. It was easy to secure the place. It was easy to have signboards there for safety, all these things. But post-COVID, much of our world has become an e-world. Much of our employees have flexible work hours. Much of our employees work from home. As somebody in the earlier panel said, digital nomads working from a beach in Thailand. How do we make these people feel cared for? That is how the concept of duty healthcare has evolved now, from a physical space to an e-space. And I will again go back to one of the conversations that I heard in the earlier panel, situational awareness. In the e-space, we cannot physically go and secure the space, or we cannot physically go and mitigate safety hazards. So the individual becomes important again. Does the individual have situational awareness? Does he have the capability to assess his surroundings, to avoid the imminent danger around him? And if he has an incident, what is the channel of reporting? Does he know that well? So our duty of care has actually now evolved into clear and crisp lines of communication, training, socialization of concept of security awareness, or you call it safety awareness, whatever awareness you want to give that person. And the person has to have a clear line of communication to report back. Okay, so from my experience, I can give you a small example. So what we have done, we have people working all over the world from the home. So we have created 1-minute videos on different scenarios while working at home. It could be physical security scenarios, it could be safety scenarios, it could be information security scenarios, it could be data privacy risk scenarios, and how the individual alone should cope with them, how should know them, assess them, and cope with them. That is how the concept of duty of care has changed. Yeah, it is not the concept which has changed, it is the way you make a person in the e-world still feel cared for, that the organization is there for you, organization listens to you, and organization cares for you. That's what my experience in my career has been about duty of care.
I think excellent points. How do we make them feel today, not just physically, but also in the e-world? How does the technology sort of helps them out? I think that's a great point to take on, ma'am. And coming from there, Letitia, though it's towards the end of all, but not the last. We have been talking about technology, a lot of it, and despite the potential, the uptake of technology or AI or analytics, whatever has been there, in the security sphere, it's not been as great as expected. Some people say it's because at the leadership level, the understanding of what can be done, the possibilities, application, because of the generational divide, it is not there. People are not so willing to use these new ways. So, what do you feel, is the actual situation, and how can we improve the understanding, especially for the leadership team, to use the technology, AI, much better for security?
Thank you. And yeah, thanks for the invitation and being really humble with the esteemed colleagues and panel that we've got here today. So I think what we probably need to do is just break down first and foremost what I think has come very quickly, although I would argue that many people on this call are probably in the minority. We're forward-looking people, we're looking at technologies, we're excited, we're embracing them. So I think we're possibly in a small minority here today. And I think when we pull that back into, when I go back to 2012, where I saw this convergence of technology and physical security, and we look at the generation that grew up over the last 10 years, we've seen such transformation. And I think we're also a little bit more comfortable with accepting and adopting tools and technology. But I would challenge that those of us in that sort of generational period are at a moment in our lives where we grew up in a big transformational change. And I would just challenge that a lot of leaders maybe are of an older generation where they weren't necessarily part of that big transformation and technology. And so now what I'm starting to feel and find is that those senior people who are the budget holders, the senior decision makers, they are excited by what they hear and see around the world, their colleagues, their peers, their competitors. But they're also super nervous, and they're very heavily reliant on the leadership from the security teams about what can we do, what should we do. But it takes me back very much to, well, how was I brought along on this journey? Because I believe we need to take them on that journey as well as trusted advisors. We are seeing a wealth of AI, large language models coming out now that really we know can help what we're doing. But I think it comes back to the same old challenges that we've always had. It's cost. Okay, these new things, they cost money. But we've also got the wider challenges that we actually wrestle with today, which is integration. How do we integrate that at the best efficient costing to make it reasonable and palatable for the budget holders and that older generation to understand? And then one of the things that's always coming back is, well, what's wrong with what we've got? It does the job, doesn't it? So now we're getting into how do we tell that story? And what I'm sort of bringing through here is we've got a newer generation who use these technologies and can just tell us why it's really important. But I would say I sit in the generation that brings the ethical consideration to that generation. I would challenge that I bring a level of experience of, well, that's great, but have we done enough due diligence behind it rather than spending this money and finding it's not working? And so I feel that between what I call the new generation, where I sort of sit in the middle, and the senior leadership, we've got a transition of knowledge that still needs to happen to make the more generational, the older generation that are still in leadership positions, to trust and be comfortable with what we're advising, but also trusting and knowing that these new ways of thinking, the ways of looking at data, is very significantly different to how it was 10 years ago, in my view. And then layering on top of that, bringing back the globalization piece, you've got culture and perceptions of what is acceptable. So it boils down to trust. I think the key component here is trusting the new generation are going to be putting things in that are secure by design from build. It then is about how quickly can we adopt and be sure that these things are going to be cost effective and integration will be more seamless. But it's also back to the cost, the old adage of cost, and it's back to the storytelling. So I think to bring that together and hopefully answering your questions, yes, there's a huge amount of excitement and interest in tech and in AI and the analytics and what that can really leverage for us. But I do think it is down to skills and demands, and it's a different way of thinking. And I think nowadays skills are the new currency for career advancement. So I think we need to learn from our new generations coming through. I think everybody pinges at the moment on decision makers, and whether that's of the current generation or slightly older generation, I think it's about being in the room together. And I also think it's about that diversity of thought being in the room. So hopefully I've touched on the sort of points about the adoption, but I really hope, and I'm really excited to hear if anybody else has opposing thoughts or any other ideas to address that.
Disha, I think, absolutely great points. And, when I started, I was saying that this topic is so close to the security professionals' hearts that, I mean, we can talk a lot about it. There's a lot of experience, and, just the result is that I had another set of questions for each and every one of you. However, we have absolutely run out of time. But before we sort of finish, I'll request, a one line. What will be the takeaway from all of you? You're the leaders here, a lot of experience. So what will be the one line that you would want to give the audience, the takeaway from all this? Bruce, if I can start with you.
Okay, probably 3 lines. We've been talking about travel risk management for over 25 years, and frankly, not much has evolved in both technology and what companies are doing. That's number one. The other thing is we need to start thinking about what is the asset we're protecting? Is it the trip or the person? I say it's the person. We should be talking about people risk management. Travel is a modality of that person, right? And we need to think about the risk to the person, the duty of care and all that wonderful TRM stuff. But we also need to think about the risk of that person to the organization as they're out there and about, right? To the IP and reputation and corruption and all the things that can happen. So we really need to change our focal from let's focus on people risk as it connects to the organizational objectives through ERM and operational risk, and think about TRM as a component of that overall holistic view.
Great. Thank you so much. Saima, ma'am. You're on mute.
Sorry. So yes, we've today heard about a lot of technology, on how it aids and makes business travel safer. We've heard about how technology aids the digital nomad, and makes him feel secure and safe. However, I feel at the core of everything is human behavior. Every business traveler, every digital nomad, every employer must be well versed with what I call #AAA. Aware, assess, avoid. Be aware of your organization's process, protocols, technology given to you, the surroundings, whether you are in a remote location, whether you are traveling, whether you're at office, whether you're at home. Be able to assess the risks once you're aware of everything. And if you are able to assess the risk, be able to avoid the signs of impending emergency. And that's the core of situational awareness.
Great, ma'am. Thank you so much. Peter, from you.
And not sort of stage managed at all, actually. Following on nicely, actually, from Bruce's points, I reflect back on Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare in New York in December, and that triggered a lot of organizations to review what they do and their plans. So for me, I would say ensure that your protective intelligence, your counterintelligence programs are fully engaged to protect your organization and your people, but brackets executives, because clearly, that has that detrimental effect with key personnel if something happens to them. But I agree entirely with Bruce around we're protecting people, and that's the key bit. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bhutan, from you.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said, and just to echo Bruce's point, it's really is about people and the wider organization, and I think the generational divide is real, as Letitia says. That we see it in our conversations with different organizations, and it's not only about sort of age generation. It's just whether people think that technology can enable or whether it's all right the way we're doing it. I think the one message I'd like to kind of leave is that data is no longer just a responsibility of the IT or the CIO. CSOs need to realize that the data that they are responsible for in the organization, and which sometimes just gets sent out to third-party providers without a second thought, there will come a day when the organization wants to start training AI models and starting to think about the future of that data, and the CSO will be asked, hey, where is all our data and how well integrated is it? And they need to have an answer for that. So I think this technology is an enabler, and without data, there isn't a lot that we can do, whether it's AI or everything else. And so the CSOs need to start thinking about data more than they currently do.
Thank you, Bhutan. Jason, from you.
Yeah, thanks. Look, just a quick anecdote. I've used training material for at least 10 years, which is a scene from The Bourne Identity, where Jason Bourne sits at a bar and identifies the weight of a man, the car outside, and all the exits. And 2 minutes later, I show a video of people walking into lampposts while they're looking at their telephones, right? And I've done it on purpose, and it's really good, and it captures the audience. We push people to technology. People talk about the Orwellian universe, and you go on a bus and there's 900 people looking at the same phone. The very thing that we're asking them to use as an adaptive tool for travel security is the thing that's actually making them less situationally aware. So Hema mentioned it earlier. So my word of the month, of the year, of the century is situational awareness. And I would say that 99% of our job today globally is making people situationally aware. And whether that's of following induction videos or listening to what we actually tell them or managing a crisis. Situational awareness is massively being depleted across the globe. And it's making our jobs increasingly hard.
Okay, thank you so much. Letitia, from you.
Yeah, I think I'll just stay on the people topic there. I think it's really important that we consider the person and how they use the technology. I think it's all fair and good giving people technology, but I think we have to look at how it's being used and be adaptive to how it is going to need to be used. And as I said, I think from a company perspective, I really do feel that we all need to be bolder with trying new technology and being open-minded to the new ways of working that can really change back to that point about the behavioral considerations of the user. I think so. For me, it's looking at the individual, but also across our businesses, are we doing the most that we can do to be open-minded to the newer ways of working?
No, great. Thank you so much. Amit, last but not the least, from you.
Yeah, thank you. So I think keeping again the concept of the person at the center, I think technology we should be using for better risk assessment. What is the route to be surveyed, vetting the locations, vetting the accommodations, securing the accommodations where they will be staying. And see, 10 years ago, when we installed 10 travel or tracking, when we installed 100 tracking apps, 90 would give the live location feed. If you would have noticed, over a period of time, this location feeds have started dropping. The reason is Android and iOS both are going to make it very, very difficult to get live feed on a dashboard because of all the battery concerns and privacy concerns. A good combination, after seeing thousands of tracking devices live monitored, what I have seen is a combination of a separate device, but in order to know that it's carried by the executive, integrated panic button works well. And this panic button can also help in case of situations where you cannot do overt physical escorts. It can do a very covert privacy device also, where only in case of emergency that is pressed and all the activity can be done. So technology will basically help us in making it more preventive, predictive, and responsive. Have a safe travel journey for all your executives is my wish. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. I think planning, understanding, adopting tech, and change management across generations is what is required. Nicely summed up by everyone here. And thank you so much. We are way ahead of time. So thank you so much for the great discussion and interaction. And Manoj, hand over to you now.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone. We have had the privilege of hearing from some of the most distinguished experts and thought leaders in global security and risk intelligence. And it is evident that the world of security and risk management is evolving at an unprecedented pace. Our distinguished panelists brought forward exceptional depth of knowledge and pragmatic solutions to the evolving risk and challenges. We talked about top global risks that should be of concern to security practitioners. We talked about how geopolitics and geoeconomics are intricately driving each other. We talked about the effects of climate change, the top risks in the Middle East, the threat and risk intelligence, emerging new regulations across the globe, the AI dynamics, the cyber threats. We talked about the travel security and global travel risk and executive protection aspects. So I have gathered extensive notes while carefully listening over 3 hours, but I'll endeavor to summarize everything in 3 minutes, just give out the crux, whatever I picked up. So starting with our distinguished keynote speaker, Professor Martin Gill, whose thought-provoking address set the stage for today's exciting discussions. A very pertinent point he mentioned with examples that mere existence of a process or system is irrelevant unless it is effective in the context. And he gave wonderful examples from his even today's event and incident that he was mentioning this morning. Then we had the first panel discussion about Global Risk Outlook 2025, moderated by Sushil Pradhan, Executive Director and Chief Operations Officer, MitKat Advisory, and his distinguished thought leaders in panel, sharing their exceptional depth of knowledge. The entire essence of which cannot be summarized in a few minutes. However, some of the highlights which I picked up was importance of situational awareness, thinking like a criminal, the acronym TESOC, that's a wonderful acronym to keep the threats on the tips, and the 3 C's, the coordination, convergence, and communication between the stakeholders. So wonderful. Then we had a special highlight of today's seminar, which was the unveiling of EMEA Risk Outlook 2025 by our colleague Anushka. A very comprehensive content put together by our dedicated team of intelligence and threat analysts. A sincere thanks to the entire team of Data Surfer for their hard work and commitment in putting together this wonderful publication for our security and risk professionals across the globe. It's going to be wonderful and of great use to everyone. Another key moment in this seminar was the demonstration of critical event monitoring and risk intelligence platform Data Surfer by our colleague Abhijit, who demonstrated the features of this platform that seamlessly fuse technology and the capabilities of technology and AI with human expertise. Wonderful, Abhijit. And then we had the second panel on EMEA Risk and Opportunity Outlook 2025, moderated by our colleague Farah London, Regional Head, MitKat Advisory. And she had a set of renowned professionals and practitioners as panelists. Some of the aspects I could pick was the 4 T's from Shraddha, economy following politics and related uncertainties, public-private partnership based on trust, needs, and communication, and emphasizing the culture of resiliency. Then we had the last panel of today, the third panel, intersection of technology, travel security, executive protection, and duty of care, moderated by Ranjit Sinha, Director, MitKat Advisory, with a panel of great visionary leaders, strategists, and accomplished professionals. Some of the aspects I picked up, like the aspects of bespoke assessment of travel risk, crisis management and travel management coordination, making informed decisions based on the risks, great fundamental insights about the duty of care, use of technology in travel risk management, and that CSOs need to be conscious of data security as much. So wonderful, wonderful pouring of wisdom. I am not able to summarize all of it in 3 minutes, but there was much more to it. So all remains for me, once again, is to thank everyone, our keynote speaker, Professor Martin Gill, moderators, and distinguished panelists. Your expertise and thought leadership today have been invaluable and has truly enriched our understanding of the evolving risk landscape. Your contributions are deeply valued and appreciated. A special note of appreciation to our organizers, Kunal and his technical team, working behind the scene to make this event happen with excellent coordination. Special thanks to Ayushi for excellent MC of the event and stitching the parts wonderfully, steering through this last 3.5 hours of the sessions. And last but not the least, a big thank you to our engaged audience for their active participation, insightful questions, and keen interest. Without your participation, actually, that is what actually drives the relevance of these discussions and collective engagements that we continue to learn and grow as a professional community. So thank you once again. Over to you, Ayushi.
Thank you, Manoj Singh, for the closing remark. And with that, we conclude today's event. A huge thank you to our esteemed speakers, panelists, moderators, as well as the attendees. We hope the discussions that happened today provided a very valuable perspectives and the takeaways that will guide us in the ever-evolving world of security, risk management, and resilience. Once again, I would like to mention I would like to request all of you to follow MitKat Advisory on LinkedIn and other social media platforms to stay updated. Thank you and have a wonderful day ahead.